Chapter 96 Vermilion Phoenix Dominating the Heavens. This is amazing. We're flying at a speed 10 times more than what the flying sword can achieve. Yuan was filled with excitement as they soared through the air faster than even what most fighter jets in his world could achieve. If the young master thinks this is fast, just wait until I recover my phoenix form and powers. It'll be like comparing a slow walk to a sprint. 100,000 miles? I can even travel 1,000,000 miles in the blink of an eye. Feng Yuxiang noticed Yuan's excitement and took this chance to brag a little to improve his impression of her. 1,000,000 miles in the blink of an eye? How could anything possibly travel that fast? Yuan mumbled in a dazed voice, as he cannot even begin to imagine traveling at such a ridiculous speed. It all depends on your movement techniques, young master. There are extremely profound movement techniques out there that can allow cultivators to travel from star to star with a single step. It's not something even I can comprehend. Movement techniques, huh? Speaking of them, I don't have any movement techniques, only martial techniques. Yuan just realized this. What? The young master doesn't have a movement technique? That's outrageous. Feng Yuxiang exclaimed in a shocked voice. Huh? Are movement techniques that important? Yuan raised his eyebrows after seeing her surprised expression. Of course. Young master, movement techniques are as important as martial techniques, if not even more important. When you fight with an enemy, how you move to strike and how you move to dodge or defend is extremely important, or you will be no different than a sitting duck on the battlefield. Feng Yuxiang said to him. And she continued, if the young master does not have a movement technique, I can provide you with my movement technique. Although it's meant for phoenixes, it can still be used in the human form. Really? Yuan looked at her with flickering eyes, clearly excited for this movement technique. For more, visit lightnov/pub.com, of course. Feng Yuxiang then turned to look at Xiaohua and spoke to her. Senior, you won't mind me giving the young master a movement technique, right? Because Feng Yuxiang didn't want to be disrespectful to Xiaohua, who might be teaching Yuan as a teacher, she must ask for permission before teaching Yuan anything, as that is proper equities in the cultivation world, and trying to steal disciples from another is greatly frowned upon. After a moment of silence, Xiaohua nodded. The more brother Yuan learns the better. Xiaohua does not have a good movement technique that is befitting of brother Yuan's talent, so you can give one to him. Since she was not Yuan's master, she didn't mind other people teaching Yuan, as long as what they are teaching is not complete trash and worthless. Thank you, senior. I will try my best teaching the young master. Feng Yuxiang said to her. Sometime later, after spending a few hours in the air, Feng Yuxiang suddenly stopped. She then pointed in front of them with her head and said, this place must be the Dragon Essence Temple. I can sense a profound presence coming from that place. The most up-to-date novels are published on lightnov/pub. Yuan turned to look in the direction Feng Yuxiang was looking at to see a massive place that looked like a city but with a lot more buildings. So that's the Dragon Essence Temple, huh? It's so much larger compared to the Flying Sword Sect. I don't know a Flying Sword Sect, but the Dragon Essence Temple is one of the most powerful factions in the lower heavens, only beaten by a few places and the Heaven and Earth Palace. Feng Yuxiang said. Yuan nodded and said, anyway, the examination won't start for a few more days, so let's spend some time practicing this movement technique. Okay, let me find a suitable place. Feng Yuxiang proceeded to fly around the area until they found this empty land and descended there. This looks like the perfect place to practice my movement technique, Feng Yuxiang said as she placed Yuan back down. Sometime later, Feng Yuxiang said, since this is something I learned naturally as the Vermilion Phoenix, I don't have it written on a scroll, so the young master will have to try and learn it from watching my movements. Although it might take you much longer to understand the technique this way than to read the technique straight from a book or scroll, at least you get to witness it being executed before your eyes. Of course, it could also benefit you if you are someone who learns better from watching than reading. Also, because this movement technique is not really meant for humans, it might take the young master longer to learn it. However, I believe in the young master. If you work hard enough, you should be able to use this technique in a few years. For more, visit lightnov/pub. A few years? Yuan looked at her with wide eyes. Feng Yuxiang misunderstood Yuan's type of surprise and said with a smile on her face, I know a few years might sound a little too fast for a movement technique, but trust me, young master, I will do my best to teach you. However, Xiaohua opened her mouth to speak afterward. Your logic does not apply to Brother Yuan, Vermilion Phoenix. If you underestimate Brother Yuan, you'll be in a world of surprise. Huh? Feng Yuxiang could not comprehend Xiaohua's words and tilted her head in a puzzled manner. However, that was to be expected, since Feng Yuxiang is unaware of Yuan's heaven-defying comprehension abilities that allow him to learn even divine-grade abilities in a few hours. And before Xiaohua could even explain, Yuan opened his mouth to speak. Feng, can you show me the movement technique? Right away, young master. Feng Yuxiang nodded, and she walked until she was many meters away from them. Watch closely, young master. I will try to do this as slowly as possible, but it might still be a bit fast. Feng Yuxiang took a deep breath. And then she began moving her legs and feet in a unique but rhythmic manner. This is a movement technique? Yuan raised his eyebrows when he saw Feng Yuxiang's movement techniques, as it made no sense to him. New novel chapters are published on Li/Gitnovelpub. C/Om. A few minutes later, Feng Yuxiang stopped and asked him, What do you think, young master? I don't think I understand it. Yuan responded, and he continued, How is that going to help you dodge your opponents during a battle? You are just moving around in a small area. Feng Yuxiang pondered for a moment before speaking, Young master, why don't you try attacking me? Huh? Are you sure? Feng Yuxiang nodded and said, Yes. Okay. Yuan retrieved his spirit sword and approached Feng Yuxiang. Young master, you can attack me whenever you are ready. You also don't need to hold back. Feng Yuxiang said to him a moment later. After taking a deep breath, Yuan said, Here I come. Yuan began attacking Feng Yuxiang without any real sword techniques. The source of this content is Light Novelpu/B, Com. However, Yuan quickly realized that no matter how much he tried to hit Feng Yuxiang, she would narrowly dodge all of his attacks. This is only the basics, young master. Let me show you what this movement technique can achieve with a high mastery level, Feng Yuxiang said to him before her fiery wings returned. She then took a step towards Yuan before disappearing from his view, almost like a ghost. What do you think, young master? Feng Yuxiang's voice suddenly resounded from every direction around Yuan, causing him to look around. However, no matter which direction he looked in, Feng Yuxiang was there. In fact, there were over a dozen Feng Yuxiang casually standing around him right now, almost like her body had multiplied. What the? This is a movement technique? Are you sure you didn't clone your body instead? Yuan said with a dumbfounded expression. Feng Yuxiang suddenly stopped moving, and a second later, her clones disappeared. The source of this content is Light Novelpub. Com. I am just moving so fast that you are seeing a dozen of me, Feng Yuxiang said. So as long as I learn this movement technique, my opponents won't be able to hit me? Yuan asked her afterward. That's correct. Unless they know your movement technique or can guess where you are going to move next, it's going to be extremely difficult for them to even graze you, much less land an accurate strike on you. And even if they somehow know your movements, they still need to be fast enough to hit you. As long as you are within the lower heavens, you will be untouchable with this movement technique. Untouchable. Yuan mumbled in a low voice. By the way, this technique is called Vermilion Phoenix Dominating the Heavens. I named it myself, Feng Yuxiang said with a prideful expression on her face. Vermilion Phoenix Dominating the Heavens? What an arrogant name for a movement technique. Xiaohua was speechless by Feng Yuxiang's shamelessness to give the movement technique such a grand name. Sometime later, Yuan said to Feng Yuxiang, Feng, can you show me the movement technique a few more times? I have already memorized all of the movements, but I still need to understand its essence. You have already memorized the movements? Feng Yuxiang looked at him with a dazed face. There are over 1,000 movements for the movement technique. How can someone at the spirit warrior level memorize that many movements in such a short time? That was simply unbelievable. Visit lies/tnovelp/ub.com for a better experience. Chapter 97 Movement Technique. Seeing Feng Yuxiang's shocked face, Xiaohua smiled and thought to herself, if you are shocked about something so insignificant, you might die from a heart attack after you see Brother Yuan's other talents. Meanwhile, Feng Yuxiang pondered to herself, did the young master really memorize all of the steps after watching it just once? No, that's not possible. There's no way someone from the lower heavens can possibly have such a shocking level of talent. However, the young master has a bloodline that's above the divine grade, and his origins are not clear, so he might actually be someone from the upper heavens who decided to come to the lower heavens for training, hence why there's a spirit king following him. However, even if that's the case, how can a spirit king remain in the lower heavens without being punished by the heavens with heavenly tributions? Maybe she has a treasure that hides her presence? But I have never heard of such a treasure like this before. Are you okay, Feng Feng? Yuan suddenly called out to her. If you're tired, we can continue this later. He wondered if she was tired after that impressive demonstration. And no. I am fine. Let me show you the movements again, young master. Feng Yuxiang took a deep breath before she began displaying the Vermilion Phoenix dominating the heavens movement technique again. Meanwhile, Yuan stared at her with intensive eyes, looking as though he was trying to stare a hole in Feng Yuxiang's body. What an intensive gaze. Feng Yuxiang's body trembled slightly after feeling Yuan's gaze, feeling as though there was nothing she could hide from him and almost like she was naked before his powerful gaze. Many minutes later, Feng Yuxiang finished her demonstrating the movement technique for the second time. For more, visit l/itnovel/pub/com. What do you think, young master? Feng Yuxiang asked him afterward. I think I have the gist of it. Can you do it again? This time, I'll try to follow your movements. Yuan said as he approached her. You want to do the movement technique with me? Feng Yuxiang raised her eyebrows, and she continued, I don't mean to be disrespectful, young master, but even if you memorize all of the movements, executing the movements is an entirely different matter. Although you may get the first couple steps correct, everything after that will be a mess. At least that's how learning movement techniques usually happen. Well, even if that's the case, how else am I going to get better at it besides practice? Yuan said to her. I guess so. Feng Yuxiang nodded. Whenever you are ready, young master, she said to him a moment later. Go ahead. After hearing his words, Feng Yuxiang began using her movement techniques again, and Yuan tried his best to follow her movements. The most up-to-date novels are published on li//gitnovelp/ub. Feng Yuxiang was dumbfounded when Yuan copied her movements flawlessly, and although his movements grew stiff and awkward towards the end, he still managed to execute the movements without any mistakes. This blew Feng Yuxiang's mind wide open. How can a mere mortal at the spirit warrior realm learn her Vermilion Phoenix dominating the heavens movement technique so quickly? Shed only displayed the movement technique twice. You were right, Feng Feng. Although the beginning was simple and easy to follow, it grew increasingly exhausting and difficult to move towards the end. However, I should get it right after a few more tries, Yuan said to her with an innocent face, unaware that what had just done was incredibly shocking and unbelievable. Feng Yuxiang was at a loss for words. Hee. A small chuckle could be heard from Xiaohua, who watched the entire thing from beginning to end. Xiaohua told you not to underestimate Brother Yuan, Vermilion Phoenix. He's a prodigy who can learn divine-grade techniques in only a few hours and even learn profound techniques just by watching others, Xiaohua said to her with a smile on her face. Although this is Feng Yuxiang's first time seeing Xiaohua smile, she was more shocked by what Xiaohua said. The source of this content is Lighten/Ovalpub. The young master can learn divine-grade techniques within hours? What kind of heaven-defying talent is that? Feng Yuxiang stared at Yuan with a dazed expression on her face. Sometime later, after resting until he could move again, Yuan began to execute the movement technique again. This time, it appeared even smoother and more accurate than previously, almost like his experience with it had leaped by at least a few years between his first and second attempt. Feng Yuxiang's jaw dropped upon seeing Yuan's improvement. Just how ridiculously talented is her young master. He could even put the talented geniuses from the upper heavens to shame with his tremendous talents. However, Xiaohua suddenly said to her, "If you think that's the most shocking part about Brother Yuan, just wait until you see him do that." That? What do you mean that, senior? Feng Yuxiang asked with her interest piqued. You'll find out eventually, Xiaohua shrugged, as she wanted Feng Yuxiang to find out naturally as she did. Feng Yuxiang swallowed nervously, and she silently pondered to herself what that could possibly mean. Meanwhile, Yuan spent the next hour practicing the movement technique. For more, visit lighten/ovalpub/com. I think I finally got it, Feng. What do you think? Yuan asked her as his legs continued to move without stopping, feeling quite comfortable with the movement technique now. Why yes. You have pretty much learned the technique now, young master. Feng Yuxiang said, her gaze filled with admiration. However, Yuan did not stop practicing the movement technique, and he continued until he finally received a notification. You have learned Vermilion Phoenix Dominating the Heavens, Vermilion Phoenix Dominating the Heavens, rank, Divine Mastery Level, 1. Description, a powerful movement technique created by the Vermilion Phoenix Feng Yuxiang, 2 hours. The young master managed to learn my movement technique that took me years to learn in just 2 short hours. Is he really human? Feng Yuxiang mumbled in a low voice as she watched Yuan perfect her movement techniques with a dazed expression on her beautiful face. Follow current novels on /l/itnovelpub/com. While she has seen her fair share of talented cultivators in the upper heavens, none of them could compare to Yuan in terms of their comprehension skills, and even the top genius would need at least a month to learn divine grade techniques, much less a few hours. After resting for a few minutes, Yuan said to them, I am going to log off now, and I probably won't be back until the examination starts, so don't panic if I don't return tomorrow. Okay. See you later, Brother Yuan. Xiaohua said to him before disappearing into the necklace. Seeing this, Feng Yuxiang also disappeared into his chest. Once he logged off the game, Yuan immediately began cultivating in the real world until Yuro returned from school and prepared dinner for him. A few hours later, Yuro entered his room with 3 bowls of soup on a cart and some cleaning utilities. Brother, what did you do in the game today? Yuro asked him as she removed the blanket around his body before removing his clothes and wiping his body down with a warm wet towel. I learned a new technique today, a movement technique, Yuan said. Movement techniques? What are those? Yuro asked. The most up-to-date novels are published on /li/novel/pub.com. Yuan proceeded to explain to her about movement techniques and how they can be used to dodge attacks and many other things. Wow. So you learned another divine grade technique? As expected of you, brother. It's only been a day since you started playing alone again and you have already made significant progress. Perhaps I really am a burden to you. Yuro sighed. Nonsense, you are definitely not a burden. If not for you, we would have never gone to Phoenix City or met with Feng, not to mention the myriad of techniques, so you have definitely contributed to my progress. Yuan said. If you say so. Yuro nodded. Sometime later, after cleaning Yuan's body, Yuro said, Brother, since 2 bowls of soup was not enough yesterday, I have cooked 3 bowls of soup for tonight. Thank you, Yuro. After feeding Yuan the second bowl of soup, Yuro asked him, What do you think, brother? Can you eat another bowl? Yes, I can, Yuan said. Okay. Yuro nodded and proceeded to spoon-feed him the 3rd bowl of soup. For more, visit lighten/oval/pub.com. What about now? Are you full now? Yuro asked him afterward. Yuan hesitated to respond. Yuro raised her eyebrows when she saw this, and she said, Brother, it's okay to tell me the truth. If 3 bowls of soup are not enough, I will cook 4, 5, until you are satisfied. After a moment of silence, Yuan said, although I am not full, I actually feel like I ate something this time, so perhaps I will be full after 2 or 3 more bowls. 2 or 3 more bowls. Heavens, brother, are you going to eat an entire week's worth of food every day now? Are you sure your body can handle that much food? What if you get fat? Yuro spoke in a worried voice. Huh. I don't think you'll have to worry about that, Yuan said. After all, everything he eats will naturally turn into energy that will aid him in his cultivation. And he continued, however, I don't think I need to have a full stomach every meal. Just 3 bowls are good enough for now. Okay. Then I will continue feeding you 3 bowls of soup every meal until Dr. Wang gives his advice. Yu-ro nodded. Follow current novels on //l//itnovelpub/com. Chapter 98 Dragon Essence Temple Disciple Examination. After Yu-ro finished feeding Yuan, she said to him, okay, brother. Now that your own room has been cleaned, I am going to let you sleep by yourself again. A few moments later, Yu-ro carried Yuan to the wheelchair before pushing him back to his own room. Do you want to play tonight, brother? Yu-ro asked him. Now that she knows his real identity as player Yuan, she was more willing to let him play more so that he can continue progressing as much as possible. No, it's okay. In fact, I am going to take a break for a few days until the Dragon Essence Temple examination begins, Yuan said to her. Huh? You're taking a break already? Why? Yu-ro asked him with a dumbfounded expression on her face. Although missing a few days of progress might not matter when Yuan's already months, even years ahead of other players, it still doesn't make any sense why he would want to take a break so suddenly. Did something happen today? Is that why you're taking a break? Yu-ro asked him. It's okay to speak to me, brother. No, it has nothing to do with the game, honestly. I just want to take a break and prepare myself before I partake in the examination. Preparations for the examination, in the real world? Yu-ro could not understand his intentions, but since Yuan insisted on taking a break, there was nothing she could do. After all, it was not as if she could force him to play the game. Follow current novels on lightnovelpub.com. Okay. Then I'll leave you alone now. Good night, brother. Yu-ro closed the lights in the room before leaving Yuan alone. Once he was alone, Yuan immediately began cultivating, and he would not stop for the rest of the night. By the following morning, Yuan had managed to break through once again, reaching 4th level Spirit Apprentice. HAA. This is taking much longer than the game. If only there were monster cores in this world or things equivalent that would allow me to increase my cultivation faster. Yuan sighed. Sometime later, Yu-ro entered his room to clean his face and brush his teeth before feeding him breakfast. After Yuan consumed all 3 bowls of soup, Yu-ro wiped his lips with a wet towel before leaving for school. Once he was alone again, Yuan returned to cultivating. Even though the progress might be slow, at least he can make some progress. Yuan repeated this process for the next 2 days, and besides eating and cultivating he was doing nothing else, not even sleeping. By the time the Dragon Essence Temple began their disciple examination, Yuan had reached the 5th level Spirit Apprentice realm. The source of this content is lightnovel/pub/c/om, Yu-ro, I am going back to today. The Dragon Essence Temple should begin their disciple examination today, too, Yuan said to her after breakfast. Okay. Good luck, brother. Of course, I'm sure you'll pass the exam without any effort. Yu-ro chuckled. And then she said, oh, I know you're already going to be in the spotlight, so try not to reveal your identity as player Yuan, okay? You have no idea how many players are looking for you right now. If they learn of your identity, our lives will no longer be as peaceful. I understand. Yuan responded in a nervous voice. Sometime later, Yuan returned to the world of cultivation. Welcome back, brother Yuan. Xiaohua was the first to appear before him. I am back. The Dragon Essence Temple Disciple examination should be today, right? Yuan asked. That's right. Xiaohua nodded, and then she turned to look towards the direction of the Dragon Essence Temple. There's already a lot of people gathered. Then let's get going. Follow current novels on /lightnovelpub///com. However, Xiaohua shook her head and said, Brother Yuan, Xiaohua will remain inside the necklace until you decide to leave the sect or need help. This way, Brother Yuan can experience the cultivation world the way it's meant to. If you ever need advice, Xiaohua will speak to you using divine sense like the Vermilion Phoenix. Yuan nodded and said, It's going to feel lonely without having you by my side all the time, but I understand why you are doing this. After Xiaohua returned to the necklace, Yuan began running towards the Dragon Essence Temple. Oh, right. There will be a lot of people participating in this examination, both NPCs and players alike. In order to keep my identity safe, I should at least hide my face. Thinking that, Yuan stopped moving and retrieved the black jade mask and wore it on his face, hiding everything but his bright and innocent eyes. This should be good enough, Yuan nodded to himself before he continued running towards the Dragon Essence Temple. Sometime later, Yuan arrived at the Dragon Essence Temple, and as had expected, there was already a sea of people gathered there. Wow! Is this what it feels like going to school on the first day? Yuan wondered to himself as he followed the crowd. Many minutes later, they arrived at this mountain range that had nothing but mountains and trees beside a large gate at the horizon that had a majestic sign with the words Dragon Essence Temple on it. Visit li/novel//pu/b.com for a better experience. We are taking the examination here? Yuan raised his eyebrows. After waiting around for a few more minutes, a middle-aged man wearing colorful robes appeared before them by jumping on top of the gate. Welcome to the Dragon Essence Temple Disciple Examination. Before we begin the examination, we must verify whether or not you are actually qualified to be here. The middle-aged man spoke to them in a loud and domineering voice. Below me is a transportation gate that will teleport you to the real examination halls. However, only those who have the Dragon Essence Temple exam token will be teleported to the examination hall. Everyone else will be teleported randomly to the mountain range behind me, and there are many powerful magical beasts that roam that area, so if you are thinking about sneaking into the disciple examination, I urge you to rethink that decision because we won't take responsibility for whatever happens to you afterward. Chapter 99 First Tes. Now, if you are ready to partake in the Dragon Essence Temple Disciple Examination, step forth and enter the gate. After he finished speaking, the middle-aged man jumped down from the gate before walking into the gate as a demonstration, disappearing into the portal. And immediately afterward, the people there began rushing towards the gate. Meanwhile, there were more than just a couple of people there who decided to remain standing still and not approach the gate, clearly hesitant to continue. As for Yuan, he followed the mass and entered the gate. A second after entering the gate, along with every person that entered the gate, Yuan was transported to this vast and empty grassland that stretched to the horizon. Furthermore, there was another gate that resembled the one they just entered a few miles away from their location. Where are we? The people there were puzzled as to why they were brought to this empty grassland. After all, what could they possibly do in this place that is related to the examination? After waiting for a few minutes for everyone to gather, the middle-aged man with the colorful robes began to speak. This will be your first examination. In this vast grassland that spans over 10,000 miles, there are 1,000 hidden jade slips, and only those who have a jade slip may advance to the next stage of the examination. You all have 2 days to advance to the next test by entering the gate over there before you are automatically disqualified and kicked out of this place. Does anyone have any questions? The participants there immediately raised their hands. This content is taken from lig/novelpub/com. What kind of examination is this? I don't see how finding a needle in a haystack has anything to do with becoming a disciple of the Dragon Essence Temple. The middle-aged man turned to whoever just spoke and said, "This is an examination based on your luck. We are simply testing your fate, whether you are fated to become a disciple or not. Although you may not understand it, one's fortune and destiny play a huge role in the cultivation world, and without either of these, You will never achieve anything great in the cultivation world, and our Dragon Essence Temple has no use for someone like that. Senior, what exactly do you mean by hidden? Are they buried underground or are they just placed around this grassland? Another participant asked a few moments later. The middle-aged man smiled at the participant's question and said, there are 997 jade slips resting above the ground normally with 3 special jade slips buried within the ground. If any of you manages to find the jade slip buried within the ground, you will receive a very special reward at the end of the examination if you pass the examination, or you can exchange the jade slip to automatically become a disciple. However, if you do that, you will forfeit the reward. The choice is up to you. After answering a few more questions, the middle-aged man said, the first examination begins. Immediately after the middle-aged man ended his sentence, the thousands of people gathered there began spreading out in every direction and running around with their heads looking left and right without stopping. Meanwhile, Yuan stood there with a calm expression on his face. This is not much different from when I had to pick spirit grass with you, Ro. I should be able to find it with my divine sense, Yuan thought to himself. Why is this young lad just standing there? The middle-aged man turned to look at Yuan after noticing his odd behavior. However, when he saw the powerful aura subtly emitting from Yuan's body, he immediately gasped in shock. Updated from /light/novelpub, /com 5th level spirit warrior? Why the hell is someone like that participating in our disciple examination? He could instantly qualify to become an inner disciple if he spoke to a sect elder. It was not just the middle-aged man who had noticed Yuan's powerful presence, as a few figures within the participants had also taken notice of him. Furthermore, the sect elders that were watching the disciple examination from somewhere within the Dragon Essence Temple with a treasure were all pondering to themselves why someone at his level would go through the trouble to participate in the examination meant for beginners or those without backgrounds. In fact, there were even a few of them who thought Yuan could be a spy sent by another place. After taking a deep breath, Yuan closed his eyes and began using his divine sense to search for the jade slips. Divine sense? Impossible. He's only a spirit warrior. How can he possibly use divine sense? But that aura. This feeling. He's definitely using divine sense. The middle-aged man became even more surprised after realizing what Yuan was doing, nearly falling on his butt from shock. Meanwhile, somewhere in the Dragon Essence Temple, a dozen sect elders gathered and watched the situation from a large bucket of water that projected whatever was happening in the examination hall. What the heck? Who is this person? He can even use divine sense as a spirit warrior. Whoever he is, his background must be immensely powerful. That's probably why he's hiding his identity. This content is taken from lightnovelpu/b. What should we do? Should we just let him participate in the examination? Let's continue watching to see what he's up to. While many pairs of eyes watched Yuan's every movement, Yuan himself had already found 6 pieces of jade slip with his divine sense. It's too easy if I look for the normal jade slips. Let's try finding the ones buried in the ground for that special reward. I have 2 whole days, anyway. With that in mind, Yuan walked around the vast grassland with his divine sense activated. After walking around for 3 hours with his divine sense constantly looking around, Yuan suddenly stopped moving. Oh. Is this it? Yuan retrieved his starry abyss and used it to dig a hole in the ground. A few moments later, he grabbed the red-colored jade slip from the ground. New novel chapters are published on lightnovelpub. Meanwhile, the people watching him were speechless, as they didn't expect someone with divine sense to participate in their disciple examination. So much for luck and fate. The middle-aged man sighed after seeing the red jade slip in Yuan's hands. Chapter 100 Second Tes. After obtaining one of the 3 special jade slips, Yuan proceeded to walk towards the gate. However, the middle-aged man overseeing that examination suddenly approached Yuan and blocked his path. Congratulations on finding the first special jade slip, young man. I am Elder Long, an outer court sect elder for the Dragon Essence Temple. May I have your name? The middle-aged man spoke to Yuan in a polite voice. Yuan, he responded. Taoist Yuan, huh? Anyway, since you have the special jade slip, allow me to explain a few more things to you. You can obtain a special jade slip in every test, and the more you gather, the better your reward will be towards the end. Furthermore, if you manage to obtain a special jade slip for every test, you'll get to enter the Dragon Temple for 24 hours. Dragon Temple? What is that? Yuan asked. The Dragon Temple is a very special place that can only be accessed by the Sect Master of the Dragon Essence Temple, and once inside, you will have a limited time to search for and obtain as many treasures as you can in the given time. As for what kinds of treasures you can find inside, you will learn more about it if you actually manage to obtain access to that place. Yuan nodded and said, okay, I will try my best. Good luck, Taoist Yuan. Elder Long said to him before leaving him alone and returning to overseeing the other participants. This content is taken from lightno/ve/pub. Come after Elder Long left, Yuan continued moving forward and entered the gate a few moments later, disappearing from the grassland. Once Yuan left, Elder Long turned to look at the sky and said, his name is Yuan. A prodigy who can use divine sense as a spirit warrior can't be a nobody. Meanwhile, a few of the sect elders watching the exam left the spectators' room and began trying to uncover Yuan's real background. This is the second examination? Yuan looked around the area that resembled the wilderness. Congratulations on passing the first test. In order to pass the second exam, you must hunt magical beasts. A young woman suddenly approached Yuan and said to him. Hunting magical beasts? Perfect. Yuan said. The young woman raised her eyebrows after seeing Yuan's enthusiasm. Normally, one would not react with excitement when they're told to hunt magical beasts but nervousness instead. The young woman then said with a frown on her face, although there are sect elders scattered around this place to make sure there are as few incidents as possible, we cannot guarantee your safety, and there have been plenty of participants who died here. Visit Lighten/Ovalpub. C/OM for the best novel reading experience, I see. Yuan nodded, yet his voice did not sound worried at all. The young woman was speechless. However, when she used her spiritual sense to look at Yuan's cultivation base, her eyes widened with shock. 5th level spirit warrior, she exclaimed in a loud voice. Yes, I am at the 5th level spirit warrior. Is there something wrong with that? Yuan asked her in an innocent voice. Yes. I mean. No. The young woman did not know how to respond to Yuan's question. Although the examination did not forbid spirit warriors from participating in the examination, they have also never had a participant as powerful as Yuan before, as most people above the spirit apprentice realm would automatically be accepted into the Dragon Essence Temple without needing to pass the examination. Furthermore, most of the magical beasts in this examination were only at the spirit apprentice level with only a few at the spirit warrior level. There was simply no way someone at the 5th level spirit warrior level would have trouble in this place. After a moment of silence, the young woman cleared her throat before speaking, ahem. Anyway, in order to pass this test, you must hunt magical beasts to obtain points, 100 points to be exact. Depending on the level of the magical beast you defeat, you will gain a certain amount of points. For example, magical beasts at the 1st level spirit apprentice level will give you 1 point and a 3rd level spirit apprentice magical beast will give you 3 points. As for the magical beasts above the spirit apprentice level, they will all give you 25 points. There will be a time limit of 3 days for this exam. Visit l/i/novelpub/com for the best novel reading experience. Do you have any questions? Yuan nodded before asking, what about the special jade slip? How do I obtain that here? The special jade slip. Yuan then showed her the red jade slip he obtained from the first test. Oh, that. It's been so long since someone tried to obtain it that I'd nearly forgotten about it. 1,000 points. If you can obtain 1,000 points, you'll get the special jade slip, said the young woman. 1,000 points. This might take longer than the previous test. Yuan mumbled. After a moment of silence, Yuan asked the sect elder, Senior, where can I find the most magical beasts at the spirit warrior level? Over there. The sect elder pointed towards the west. Visit lightnovelpus/b/com for a better experience, thank you. Yuan said to her before running towards the west. Where on earth did such an oddball come from? 5th level spirit warrior. He's already almost at my cultivation level, yet he's taking the examination? The sect elder shook her head after Yuan left. +4 points. Notification appeared after Yuan killed a magical beast at the 4th level spirit apprentice realm in a single hit with the Empyrean Overlord. Heavens, this is such a powerful sword. The spirit sword is nothing compared to this. Yuan looked at the massive sword in his grasp that felt no heavier than a wooden stick with a mesmerizing gaze. Even though the monster was only at the spirit apprentice level, had managed to kill it with a casual swing that barely had any force behind it, almost like slicing tofu with a sharp knife. There was simply no resistance from the magical beasts. Chapter 101 Third Tes. +5 points, +6 points, +3 points, +7 points. Every time Yuan swung his massive sword, a magical beast would inevitably succumb to death, and his points racked up extremely quickly, resembling the time at Pang City. Meanwhile, the sect elder watching Yuan sweep through the magical beasts as though they were trash was shocked speechless. Which numbskull gave a 5th level spirit warrior the examination token? Whoever it was, he needs a damn beating. And I will be the first to volunteer for that. The sect elder cursed inwardly as he counted the points Yuan had obtained. 2 hours later, Yuan had managed to collect a total of 300 points. Did that senior give me the wrong directions? I haven't seen a single spirit warrior magical beast since I started hunting them. Yuan sighed. After running around aimlessly for another hour, Yuan finally encountered a magical beast at the spirit warrior level. However, because he immediately killed it a second later, it didn't feel any different from hunting spirit apprentice magical beasts. Updated from Light Novel Pub. Calm the fuck. He killed a spirit warrior magical beast in a single strike. And he even made it look so effortlessly. The sect elder watching Yuan cried inwardly after seeing this. What is someone like him doing at the Dragon Essence Temple? Although we may be one of the top sects, there are other places stronger than us, such as the Heaven and Earth Palace. Surely, he would benefit more by going to those places. The sect elder could not understand Yuan's intentions for choosing their sect when there are much better options out there, and those sects would not refuse someone as ridiculously talented as him even in a million years, yet he decided to come to the Dragon Essence Temple, even going through the effort of participating in the disciple examination. Meanwhile, Yuan continued to slay magical beasts for points without a care in the world. After a few more hours, Yuan finally managed to amass a total of 1,000 points, becoming the first participant to reach 1,000 points in many decades. What else can one expect? It's like throwing a tiger into a chicken pen. The sect elder watching Yuan wasn't even surprised that had obtained 1,000 points. In fact, he expected nothing less from Yuan. A few moments later, the sect elder watching Yuan decided to approach him and said, "Congratulations, young man. You have managed to collect 1,000 points, being the first person in 69 years to have achieved this." The sect elder congratulated him. "Thank you. Do I get my special jade slip now?" Yuan asked. "Of course. Here you go." The sect elder then handed to Yuan a blue-colored jade slip. Follow current novels on Light Novel Pub. And then he continued, "The gate is to the north that way." Once Yuan left the scene, the sect elder took a seat on the floor with an exhausted expression on his face. "I have never felt so tired in my life, and I haven't even done anything significant. However, I am more mentally exhausted than physically, so, sometime later, Yuan reached the gate to the next test. However, he didn't immediately enter it. Instead, he logged off to cultivate until Yuro entered his room with dinner. "How was the examination, brother?" Yuro asked him as she wiped his body. "Was it difficult?" "It's actually pretty easy," But I have only experienced 2 tests, so I cannot say anything for the rest of the exams. In fact, I don't even know how many exams I have to pass before I become a disciple, Yuan said. Is that so? Want to tell me about it? For more, visit lightnovelpub.com. Of course, Yuan said, and he proceeded to tell her about the first exam and then the second exam. Huh. You make it sound so easy, but I bet it's actually very difficult for the others. Yuro chuckled. Sometime later, after dinner, Yuro returned to her own room whilst Yuan returned to the cultivation world to continue with the exam. After entering the gate to the third test, Yuan found himself before a very large pond with silver-colored water and a silver tree towards the end of the pond. Furthermore, there were already over 100 people waiting near the silver pond. What is this? Yuan raised his eyebrows. Welcome to the third test. A young man wearing regular disciple robes suddenly greeted Yuan. Hello. What do I have to do for this test? Yuan asked him. It's very simple. You just enter the pond and walk towards the silver tree. The further you go, the better the results. However, you only need to take 20 steps in order to pass this exam. The disciple explained to him. 20 steps. Yuan became even more puzzled after the explanation. What kind of weird exam was this? The source of this content is lightnovelpub.com. Seeing Yuan's puzzled eyes behind the black mask, the disciple continued, this pond is no ordinary pond. It's a profound treasure that tests one's talent, and the further you can go, the more talented you are. Normal cultivators would only be able to take around 10 steps before they are unable to move forward. Meanwhile, talented cultivators should have no problem taking over 20 steps. If you can take 50 steps, you are considered a peak cultivation genius, but only 1 or 2 people would achieve that every 10 years. I see. Yuan nodded as he finally understood the meaning behind this test, and he asked a moment later, what happens if one reaches the tree in the back? The disciple looked at Yuan with a dazed face before laughing out loud. It takes 100 steps to reach the silver tree, but there has only been one person in our sect's history that has managed to reach the silver tree, and that person is the Dragon Essence Temple's founder, who had passed away over 100,000 years ago. 100,000 years ago. Yuan mumbled in a dazed voice. Oh, I have one more question. How many steps do I need to take to obtain the special jade slip from this test? Yuan then asked. The special jade slip? That requires you to take 75 steps if I recall correctly. The disciple said. Okay, thank you, Yuan said before joining the other participants. Chapter 102 50 Steps. After joining the other participants near the silver pond, Yuan watched as the participants walked on the silver water one by one. The person currently taking this test was a young man who just took his 13th step towards the silver tree. However, this young man's face was soaked in sweat, looking as though he had just run a marathon or had been splashed in the face with a bucket of water. Oh! The young man suddenly began shouting while lifting his leg slowly, looking as though he was really struggling to take another step. Splash! The young man fell a few seconds later, falling directly on top of the silver water without submerging into the water like one would have expected. 13 steps, failed. The sect elder standing next to the silver pond said after the young man fell down. The sect elder then waved his sleeves, using his spiritual energy to pull the participant back to where the other participants were gathered before speaking out loud, next. A moment later, a young lady stepped forward and bowed to the sect elder before turning to stare at the silver pond and the tree. After taking a deep breath, she took her first step into the silver liquid and towards the silver tree. Visit lig/novelp/ub//com for the best novel reading experience. Tap. Tap. Tap, the silver water rippled with every step the young lady took. A few moments later, the young lady took her 19th step. On her 20th step, although she struggled a little bit, she still managed to take the 20th step, passing the exam. However, the young lady did not stop despite already passing the exam and continued to push herself for a few more steps. In the end, the young lady managed to achieve 23 steps for the exam. You have passed. You may enter the gate now and proceed to your final test. The sect elder said to the young lady, who bowed to him before leaving the test area. So there is only one more test after this one, huh? I wonder what kind of test it is. Yuan pondered to himself as he continued to watch the participants challenge the test one by one. About half an hour later, a young lady with long black hair and a pair of sharp eyes stepped forward to challenge the silver water. However, unlike the previous participants, this young lady attracted the attention of every individual there with her beauty and the domineering aura around her. It's finally Fairy Min's turn. I wonder how many steps the genius of the Min family is going to take. Follow current novels on lightnovelpoo/b.com. Hahaha, of course, she's going to take 50 steps easily. Good luck, Fairy Min. The participants there spoke and cheered for her as though they were very familiar with this beautiful lattice identity, and even the sect elder foreseeing the test gave her an approving nod. A few moments later, once the atmosphere calmed down and the participants were quiet, the young lady known as Fairy Min took her first step into the silver pond. 1 step, 2 steps, 3 steps. Fairy Min easily traveled over 10 steps without any effort and with her every movement filled with confidence and arrogance. 11 steps, 12 steps, 13 steps. Fairy Min took her 20th step as effortlessly as she did the previous 10 without breaking a single sweat on her body. As expected of Fairy Min. She might even reach 75 steps at this rate. Follow current novels on lightnovelpub.com. The other participants were incredibly excited for Fairy Min, feeling as though they were in her shoes. A few more moments later, Fairy Min took her 30th step, surpassing every participant that had taken this test thus far. A few more moments later, she took her 40th step. However, after taking her 40th step, Fairy Min did not immediately take her next step and instead stood still for a minute to catch her breath. Almost a minute later, Fairy Min finally challenged the silver pond with her 41st step. Splash! A powerful ripple appeared in the pond as Fairy Min took her 41st step. After her 41st step, Fairy Min stopped for another minute before taking the next step, and she would continue this until she took her 47th step. HAA. Fairy Min panted heavily with sweat dripping down her face as she took her 48th step. The most up-to-date novels are published on lightno/velpub.com. Splash. Another ripple appeared in the silver pond after she took her 48th step. After resting for a minute, Fairy Min attempted her 49th step. Ha! Fairy Min suddenly shouted out loud as she took her 49th step, and without taking another break, she went straight for the 50th step. Boom! The entire silver pond trembled after Fairy Min took her 50th step. Fairy Min wanted to take another step, but alas, she knew that her body would not be able to endure another step, so she turned around and returned to the sect elder. Congratulations, Min Li from the Min family, you are the first person in the last 7 years to have walked 50 steps for this test. The sect elder congratulated her upon her return. This content is taken from lightnov/pub.com. Thank you, senior. Min Li nodded her head, yet she appeared to be disappointed by her results. You may proceed on to the final test. The sect elder then said to her. Min Li nodded, and she walked to the gate. However, she stopped walking after she reached the front of the gate and turned around to stare in the direction of the other participants with a profound gaze, or more specifically, she was staring at the figure wearing a black jade mask, who was emitting a profound and mysterious aura. After staring at Yuan for a moment, she turned around and stepped into the gate, disappearing from the test area. Once Min Li left the scene, the other participants returned to being silent, and the test continued as usual. Many minutes later, it was finally Yuan's turn, and he stepped forward. Why is he wearing a mask? What an odd fellow. The participants mumbled to themselves after seeing Yuan's appearance. However, when the sect elder saw Yuan, his eyes widened in shock like the other sect elders. 5th level spirit warrior. He cried inwardly. Follow current novels on lightno/v/lpub.com. Chapter 103 The Final Step. What the hell is a cultivator at the 5th level spirit warrior realm doing here? Even Min Li from the Min family was only at the peak of the spirit apprentice realm. The sect elder was greatly baffled by Yuan's unusual and overwhelming presence in the exam. And since most of the other participants there were between the 3rd level and 7th level spirit apprentice realm, they weren't even able to see Yuan's real cultivation base. Just to confirm, I just have to walk to that silver tree, correct? Yuan asked the sect elder, snapping him out of his daze. That's correct. As long as you can take 20 steps, you will pass this exam. Yuan nodded his head, and he proceeded to take his first step into the silver pond. What kind of results will he have? Although he's already at the 5th level spirit warrior realm, this test doesn't care for one's achievements, only their raw talents. The sect elder watched Yuan with interest and curiosity, even a little bit of excitement, wondering what kind of results he would show them. Meanwhile, Yuan just took his first step into the silver pond. This feels like I am walking on a mattress filled with water or something like that. Yuan thought to himself as his feet touched the silver liquid that supported his weight. After taking his first step, Yuan took his second step, then a third, and then a fourth, until he took his 20th step. Who is that man? He managed to take 20 steps effortlessly like Fairy Min. Visit lightnovelpub.com for the best novel reading experience. He's blocking his face so we can't tell. The participants were surprised to see a nobody casually taking 20 steps as though he was taking a stroll in the park. Meanwhile, Yuan continued walking towards the silver tree with a calm expression on his face behind the mask. 21. 22. 23. 28. 29. 30. After taking his 30th step, Yuan did not stop and continued approaching the silver tree. Heavens! He's already taking his 35th step. And he did it without taking a single break. Could this man be another genius at Fairy Min's level? I doubt it. Fairy Min is a real cultivation genius. Although 15 steps may appear very little, the gap is actually immense, like heaven and earth. The most up-to-date novels are published on lightnovelp.com. I am willing to bet that hell stopped before 40 steps. I bet that hell reached 45 steps at most. While the participants began betting with each other for the results, Yuan continued walking towards the silver tree. A few moments later, Yuan reached 45 steps without feeling any resistance or breaking a sweat. After taking a few more steps, Yuan achieved 50 steps, rivaling Fairy Min's results. Good lord! First, we have Fairy Min who became the first person to achieve 50 steps in the last 7 years. Now we have this mysterious man who also achieved 50 steps on the same day. To have two people achieving 50 steps so close to each other, this is unprecedented. However, as the participants there trembled in excitement, Yuan continued to move forward. He's still going. 51. 52. 53. 54. 55. Follow current novels on lightnovelpub.com. Boom. The silver pond trembled the moment Yuan took his 60th step. I still don't feel any different. Is there something wrong? Yuan raised his eyebrows when nothing happened after taking 60 steps whilst the other participants began struggling much sooner. However, since he didn't feel anything, Yuan continued to walk. A few moments later, he took his 75th step, shocking the participants and the sect elder. 75 steps. He managed to take 75 steps. This man is a real prodigy. The participants stared at Yuan with gawking expressions. 1,000 years. It's been over 1,000 years since someone has taken 75 steps in the pond of evaluation. The sect elder mumbled in a dazed voice. However, Yuan was not done yet, as he still felt no resistance or challenge from the silver ponder, almost like the silver pond was purposefully going easy on him, and after taking the 75th step, he continued moving towards the silver tree towards the end. The source of this content is lightnovelpub.com. He's going for the silver tree. He might actually do it. 75 steps is already impressive enough. Does he really think he can take 100 steps and reach the silver tree that has only been achieved by one person in history, the founder of the Dragon Essence Temple? He only has 25 steps left to reach the silver tree, but every single step will feel as though he's trying to leap over an entire sea, and it will only grow increasingly more difficult as he gets closer to the tree. I am willing to bet that he won't make it past 90 steps. I bet 100 gold he'll stop at 80 steps. 50 gold he'll make it past 90 steps. I will bet 10 gold he'll actually make it to the silver tree. While the participants began another gambling session on whether the results, Yuan continued to approach the silver tree with slow but calm steps, still feeling no pressure whatsoever. This is probably the easiest test in this exam. Yuan thought to himself as he took his 90th step. This content is taken from Li/Knovelpu/B. Calm, 90 steps. He only has 10 more to go before he becomes the second person in history to reach the silver tree. Everybody there watched with a nervous feeling in their guts, feeling as though they were in Yuan's shoes. 91 steps. 92 steps. 93 steps. Every single step Yuan took after the 90th step would cause the entire place to tremble, and on his 95th step, the silver tree at the end of the pond began glowing brightly. What is happening? The sect elder took a few steps back from shock, his gaze filled with disbelief. However, Yuan ignored the glowing tree and continued to walk. 96. 97. 98 steps. On Yuan's 98th step, the silver tree began cracking with a subtle golden light coming from within the cracks. After Yuan took his 99th step, the cracks grew even larger, and the entire tree was filled with these cracks. Updated from Lighten/Oval/Pub, the final step. Yuan mumbled as he took his 100th step, leaving the silver water and stepping onto the land that hosted the silver tree. Boom! The moment Yuan finished all 100 steps, the silver tree suddenly exploded, transforming into a golden tree, baffling everyone in the test room. Chapter 104 Talent that rivals their founder. He really did it. He really managed to take 100 steps and reach the silver tree. The sect elders watching the examination from afar were all shocked speechless by Yuan's flawless performance. What happened to the silver tree, though? Why did it turn golden? This didn't happen before even when the founder achieved 100 steps, at least it was not recorded. Forget about the tree. We have another prodigy who rivals our founder in terms of talents. We must let the sect master and the grand elders know about this as soon as possible. We cannot let such a talent leave our grasp. The sect elders there then scrambled outside to look for the sect master and grand elders. Meanwhile, back at the examination hall, after crossing the silver pond and reaching the silver tree that had suddenly turned into a golden tree, Yuan calmly walked back to the other participants before approaching the sect elder. I only need to take 75 steps to receive the special jade slip, correct? Yuan asked the sect elder, not even caring about his achievement of 100 steps that put him on the same level as their founder. That's correct. The sect elder nearly forgot how to speak after experiencing this shocking event. After panicking for a few moments, the sect elder finally managed to retrieve a white-colored jade slip and handed it to Yuan with trembling hands. Here you go. The sect elder lowered his body and offered the special jade slip to Yuan, acting almost like a servant before his lord. The source of this content is Li/GHT/novelpub//. Thank you. Yuan accepted the white-colored jade slip before tossing it into his spatial ring with the rest of the special jade slips. After storing away the white-colored jade slip, Yuan turned to the gate and began walking towards it. Wait a second. Where are you going? The sect elder suddenly stopped him. Didn't I pass this test? Yuan responded in a dumbfounded voice. Since he passed this test, he was obviously going to the next test. You're going to take the next test? That won't be necessary. The sect elder shook his head and continued, you are the only person besides the founder of the Dragon Essence Temple to have achieved 100 steps in this place, meaning your talents rival our founder. There's no longer any need for you to participate in the next test because you will be accepted into the sect regardless of the results. I don't need to take the next test. Yuan raised his eyebrows. How else is he going to obtain the final special jade slip and enter the Dragon Temple? After a moment of silence, Yuan spoke, even if I pass now, I would still like to participate in the final test. After all, I have already come this far. It wouldn't feel good if I stopped here without finishing it. Furthermore, I am doing this mostly for the experience, and I don't want to lose that feeling. Doing this for the experience. The sect elder looked at Yuan with a surprised expression on his face. However, after pondering for a moment, he found sense in Yuan's words. After all, nobody at the 5th level spirit warrior realm would willingly waste their time in this place unless they were doing it for another purpose. For more, visit Lig/Novelpub. Perhaps he's a young master from a very powerful family that's currently on a journey for training? That would make sense as to why he has to hide his identity and why he's participating in this disciple examination. The sect elder thought to himself. If you insist on continuing with the examination, go ahead. I won't stop you if that's what you really want. Just remember that no matter the results, you'll still be qualified to become a disciple at our Dragon Essence Temple. The sect elder reminded Yuan before letting him go. Thank you, Yuan nodded his head, and he proceeded on to the next test shortly later. Meanwhile, somewhere within the Dragon Essence Temple, the sect master and the grand elders gathered at the spectators' room, where the other sect elders have been watching the disciple examination. Are you sure that someone from the examination managed to cross the pond of evaluation and achieve 100 steps, even making the silver tree turn golden? The sect master of the Dragon Essence Temple, Longijuan, asked the sect elders there with a serious expression on his face. Take a look for yourself, sect master. The golden tree. The sect elders pointed at the treasure that projected the area for the 3rd exam, and there was a golden tree clearly in the projection. Long Yijuan became silent and began pondering with a deep frown on his face. This participant. What's his name? Visit Light Novel Pub. C/OM for the best novel reading experience. An old man with short white hair and a short beard suddenly asked. The sect elders turned to look at the grand elder who just spoke, and one of them said, he called himself Yuan, but we're not sure whether that's his surname or given name. Furthermore, he's already at the 5th level spirit warrior realm. Huh? His name is Yuan? And he's a 5th level spirit warrior? The old man looked at the sect elders with a dazed face. Is there something wrong, Elder Xian? Long Yijuan noticed his odd reaction and asked him. After a moment of silence, Elder Xian suddenly burst out laughing for a good minute before speaking. There's no need to investigate this individual. I know him. What? You know this man? Everybody in the room looked at him with a surprised look on their faces. Elder Xian nodded and said, yes, he's my granddaughter, Xian Wuhan's friend. She sent me a message not long ago about someone very talented and by the name of Yuan who might visit our Dragon Essence Temple in the future and to treat him well. Core disciple Xian's friend? Follow current novels on Light/Novelpub. The sect elders didn't know whether to laugh or cry after hearing this news, as they had spent the entire day scrambling their heads trying to figure out Yuan's identity and whether or not he was a spy, only to find out that he was related to the Xian family. Chapter 105 The Last Tes. Now that we know this cultivation prodigy's identity, what should we do, sect master? One of the sect elders suddenly asked him. What do you think, Elder Xian? Long Yijuan turned to look at him for advice. Since he's technically yours, what do you want to do with him? Elder Xian shrugged and said, how am I supposed to know? I don't even know his intentions for coming here. We can decide where to go once I have a little conversation with this young man. And then he continued, in the meantime, you should prepare to open the Dragon Temple, sect leader. I have a good feeling this young lad will obtain the last special jade slip from the final test and collect all of them, becoming the first one to do so in 10,000 years. The Dragon Temple, huh? It's been such a long time since someone qualified to enter that place. Long Yijuan smiled, and he continued, even if this young man doesn't manage to obtain the last special jade slip, they'll still let him enter the Dragon Temple, as that is most likely what our founder would want to happen if he were still here today. After a moment of silence, Long Yijuan suddenly said, although this might be near impossible and a very difficult task to achieve, I want everything that is related to the young man named Yuan to be hidden from the public. I don't want the other sects to know about his existence for now, but when they do, it'll be a pleasant surprise for them. A pleasant surprise. Are you thinking about letting him participate in the mystic realm next month? Elder Xian looked at Long Yijuan with a surprised look on his face. He'll only be a disciple for a month at that time, whilst the other disciples participating will all be core disciples. I cannot imagine the core disciples being very happy about a nobody who just joined the sect recently taking up one of their spots so suddenly when they are working themselves to the bone to obtain a spot, and there are very few spots available, which makes this situation even more sensitive. So what if the core disciples will be unhappy? If they are unhappy, they can go ahead and try to achieve 100 steps in the pond of evaluation. Even if they complain, the cultivation world favors those with talent, so they have no right to complain unless they are more talented than him. Long Yijuan spoke in a stern voice. The sect elders in the room exchanged looks with each other. While they do not reject having someone as talented as Yuan take up a slot for the mystic realm, they don't know whether they should or should not let their disciples know about this, as their disciples were also core disciples trying to obtain a slot for the mystic realm. Long Yijuan noticed the perplexed expressions on the sect elders' faces, and he spoke, even if they are your disciples, it's best to leave them in the dark for now, as it might affect their cultivation negatively. The Dragon Essence sect was only given 3 slots for the mystic realm, and with Yuan taking one of these slots, only 2 other core disciples will participate in the mystic realm. Though, you can tell them that we have already given one of the slots to a disciple, just not his identity. Visit lightnovelpub.com for a better experience. Yes, Sect Master. The sect elders acknowledged his orders. Now, let's see how this cultivation genius will do in the final test. Will he continue to surprise us, or will he do the opposite? Long Yijuan and the other sect elders proceeded to spectate Yuan with the treasure. Meanwhile, Yuan had just walked through the gate and entered the area for the final test. It was a large but empty room with a tall stone tablet located a few meters away in the center of the room. The stone tablet resembled the stone tablets he saw in the Flying Sword sect that were used to rank the disciples, but there were no names on this one, only complex symbols that somewhat looked like words. Congratulations on passing the previous 3 exams and reaching the final exam. A young woman with a very pretty face that had been waiting in the room said to Yuan after noticing his presence. This is the final test? Where are the other participants? Yuan asked when he couldn't see anybody else there. The final exam is a bit special and requires absolute peace and concentration, so everybody will have their own room for the rest of the test, said the young woman. My name's Xianxia, and I will be overseeing this test. This content is taken from lightnov/lpub.com. Before we begin, allow me to explain to you how this exam works and what you need to do in order to pass it. Xianxia then pointed towards the tall stone tablet and said, that stone tablet contains many cultivation techniques from our Dragon Essence Temple, and your goal is to study it and try to comprehend whatever technique it shows you. As for the technique it will be showing you, it will change depending on your test results from the previous exams. Therefore, the better your results from the previous exams, the more powerful and unique the cultivation technique the stone tablet will show you. As for the condition to pass this exam, you'll need to understand at least 10% of the cultivation technique. Do you have any questions? Xianxia ended her sentence with a question. I need to comprehend 10% in order to pass, huh? What about the special jade slip? How much of the cultivation technique do I have to comprehend in order to obtain the special jade slip? Yuan asked. The special jade slip. Xianxia raised her eyebrows. This is her first time being asked about the special jade slip since she first started overseeing the participants, and it has been 2 years since then. Chapter 106 Tablet of Comprehension. After a moment of silence, Shuijie responded to Yuan's question regarding the special jade slip. In order to obtain the special jade slip, you must comprehend at least 70% of the cultivation technique. Furthermore, you have only 7 days to study the stone tablet. Of course, the better your results, the better cultivation technique you'll get to learn, but that also means you'll need much longer to understand the technique, as stronger cultivation techniques are more often than not more complex and profound. However, no matter what cultivation technique the stone tablet gives you, the requirements are the same. I understand, Yuan nodded. Good. Do you have any more questions? If you do not, you may begin the test. The moment the tablet of comprehension reveals your cultivation technique is the moment your timer begins. She asked him. How do I know how much of the cultivation technique I have comprehended in the end? Yuan asked her. The tablet of comprehension will let us know the results by the light it emits. A white glow means you have comprehended 10% of the cultivation technique which is required for you to pass this test. A green glow means you have understood 25% of the technique. It will glow an azure-colored light past 50% and a red light at 70%. At 80%, the stone tablet will emit a black light, and 90% will emit a golden light. What about 100%? Yuan asked her out of curiosity. 100%? That has never happened before, so I don't know. In fact, nobody knows what will happen, not even the founder who only managed to comprehend 90% in 7 days. Shuijie shook her head. Sometime later, Yuan walked to the tall stone tablet and stood before it. It's assessing your results and picking the perfect technique for you, so give it a few minutes, Shuijie said to him as she pulled out a chair from her spatial ring before sitting down and watching him with a nonchalant expression on her face. This content is taken from Light/Novel Pub, C/OM. Wait a second. This guy is a 5th level spirit warrior? His cultivation is even higher than mine, 2 levels higher. Shuijie was shocked when she realized Yuan's cultivation base. Just how old is this guy? His voice sounded very young, even younger than me. Shuijie cried inwardly. Meanwhile, in the spectators' room, the sect elders there started to gamble with each other. I am betting 100 contribution points that he'll achieve 50% understanding in 7 days. I will bet 50 contribution points that he will reach 70%. Since you guys are favoring him so much, I shall do the opposite. 100 contribution points that he'll reach less than 50%. 1,000 contribution points that he'll reach 90%. Long Yijuan suddenly joined the fun, dumbfounding the sect elders. 1,000 contribution points? That's 10 years worth of contribution points. The sect elders exclaimed. How about you, Elder Xian? Wanna make a bet? Whoever guesses correctly will obtain all contribution points placed in this bet. The most up-to-date novels are published on lightnovelp/ub///com. Elder Xian looked at Yuan's figure from the treasure for a moment before speaking. Then I shall bid 500 contribution points that he'll be the first person in history to reach 100% understanding. What? 100%? Everybody in the room looked at him with wide eyes. Aren't you giving him too much credit, Elder Xian? Although his talent is definitely on par with the founder's talent, even the founder could only reach 90% after 7 days. Furthermore, because of his excellent results from the previous tests, one can only imagine what kind of technique he'll get, but one thing is for sure, and that is the technique won't be a weak one. Long Yijuan also chimed in. I agree with Elder Xian. With his results, he'll get to learn at least an earth grade if not a heaven grade cultivation technique from the tablet of comprehension. I don't know about you, but I have never seen or heard of anyone that can fully comprehend an earth grade technique within 7 days, much less a heaven grade. Well, it wouldn't be a gamble if I don't go against the odds, right? Elder Xian laughed. Anyway, what is the most powerful cultivation technique the tablet of comprehension can reveal? The highest grade I have seen so far is at the earth grade, which happened 300 years ago. Hearing Elder Xian's question, Long Yijuan said, according to the Dragon Essence Temple's record, since the sect's founding, there have only been 3 people who received a cultivation technique above the earth grade from the stone tablet, and they were all at the heaven grade. However, as for the founder, although nobody knows what kind of technique had received, it was rumored to be a divine-grade technique. The most up-to-date novels are published on lightno//pub. A divine-grade technique, huh? Elder Xian mumbled with a profound expression on his face. Meanwhile, Yuan stood before the tablet of comprehension without moving a muscle, patiently waiting for it to reveal his cultivation technique. About 10 minutes later, Yuan's eyebrows suddenly twitched, as he could see lines that became symbols appearing on the tablet of comprehension. The tablet of comprehension has picked your cultivation technique. Your time starts now. Remember, you only have 7 days to comprehend as much of the technique as you can. Xianxia said to him after seeing this. Yuan immediately sat down in the lotus position and proceeded to stare at the stone tablet with an intensive gaze, looking as though he was trying to stare a hole in the stone tablet. A few more minutes later, the symbols stopped appearing on the stone tablet. Although he couldn't understand the symbols at first, after staring at the stone tablet for a few minutes, the symbols actually began moving and formed a picture. However, only Yuan was able to see this change on the stone tablet, whilst Xianxia and the others could only see a wall of still symbols. Dragon's gaze? Yuan suddenly mumbled these 2 words after staring at the picture that resembled an eyeball for many minutes with a seemingly mesmerized look on his face. At the same moment Yuan learned of the technique's name, the stone tablet emitted a white glow, shocking Xianxia and the others. New novel chapters are published on l/i//gh/novelpub. Impossible. Only 15 minutes have passed since he sat down. Xianxia immediately stood up from shock after seeing this white glow, indicating that Yuan has already understood 10% of the technique. Chapter 107 Dragon's Gaze. What? How is that possible? Am I just seeing things, or is the tablet of comprehension emitting a white glow already? It hasn't even been half an hour since he sat down. The sect elders inside the spectators' room quickly became clamorous after seeing the tablet of comprehension glowing. This young man. Long Yijuan stared at the glowing stone tablet with a dazed look on his face. This Yuan is the definition of a true cultivation genius, Elder Xian said with a smile on his face. Meanwhile, inside the examination room, Xianxia stood there with a bewildered expression on her beautiful face, looking like she'd just seen a ghost. Impossible. How did he comprehend 10% of the technique already? Even if it's a weak cultivation technique, he shouldn't be able to learn it so quickly. She cried inwardly. As for Yuan, he continued to stare at the symbols that formed an eyeball, glaring back at it with a piercing gaze. The eyeball on the stone tablet grew more realistic and lively the longer Yuan stared at it, almost as though it was coming to life, and after glaring at it for an hour, Yuan could see colors appearing on the stone tablet and coloring the large eyeball. Once the entire eyeball was colored in a golden and amber color, the tablet of comprehension began emitting a green light, indicating that Yuan had comprehended at least 25% of the cultivation technique. My God! He's already at 25% comprehension. Xianxia quickly covered her mouth when she suddenly felt the urge to scream out loud. New novel chapters are published on lightnovelpub.com, 25%. He's already at 25%. As for the people watching from the spectators' room, without needing to worry about interrupting Yuan's concentration, they shouted at the top of their lungs from excitement. Ha ha ha. At this rate, he might really comprehend the entire cultivation technique. Elder Xian laughed out loud, and he continued, and he might even do it in less than 7 days. Long Yijuan remained silent and continued to stare at Yuan with a profound gaze. Another 2 hours later, the eyeball on the stone tablet changed for Yuan again, and this time, the eyeball appeared to be emerging from the stone tablet. Yuan was startled when he saw this change, but he didn't look away, as something about the eyeball kept his gaze attached, almost mesmerized. And although the eyeball looked incredibly realistic, if one looked closely, they would not be able to sense any life in it, so it felt no different from looking at a realistic art, a masterpiece. However, as Yuan continued to stare into this eyeball for another hour, he began to feel a profound pressure coming from it. Although it was only very slightly and barely noticeable at first, the longer he stared at it, the stronger the pressure became until it felt like he was being looked down upon by some superior entity, almost like a god looking at mortals from the heavens. However, despite this intense pressure, Yuan did not back down and challenge the gaze. Follow current novels on l/i/novelpub//com boom. After staring at the eyeball for some time, the eyeball suddenly flickered with a golden light, and Yuan found himself floating in the middle of the void and surrounded by stars the next second with Xianxia and the stone tablet nowhere to be seen, almost like had been teleported to the outer space. What the? Yuan looked around with a puzzled expression on his face. A few moments later, something caught his attention, causing him to turn around. When Yuan turned around and saw the massive creature flying behind him, his hair stood up straight like a cat when frightened or feeling threatened. Is this a dragon? Yuan cried inwardly as he recognized the shape of this creature from movies when he was a kid. However, this dragon was much larger than he remembered. It had large golden eyes the size of an entire planet and a massive body that stretched to the horizon countless miles into the distance. Meanwhile, in the examination room, Xianxia noticed that Yuan had suddenly closed his eyes, seemingly asleep. Visit light//novelpub//com for the best novel reading experience. Furthermore, the stone tablet was no longer glowing a green light, and it had once again changed colors. Azure-colored light. He's comprehended 50% of the technique. Xianxia cried inwardly after seeing this change, falling down onto the chair behind her. In the spectators' room, the sect elders were no longer making noises. Instead, they silently stared at Yuan with a serious expression on their faces, pondering to themselves whether Yuan will really be able to comprehend 100% of the technique within 7 days, as it was looking increasingly likely that he would every time the stone tablet changed colors. It's only been 6 hours since he started studying the technique given by the Tablet of Comprehension, and he has already managed to comprehend over half of the entire technique. At this rate, he'll really become the first person in history to achieve 100% comprehension, and he might do it in a single freaking day. Long Yijuan thought to himself. Where on earth did you find such a monster, my dear granddaughter? Elder Xian showed a bittersweet smile on his face. Meanwhile, back in Yuan's mind where the dragon existed, even though he was like a speck of dust compared to the dragon, Yuan continued to stare back at the massive dragon despite its terrifying presence and incomprehensible size. What is your name, human? The dragon suddenly spoke to him. Oh. You can speak. Yuan was pleasantly surprised by this, and he continued, my name is Yuan. The source of this content is light.novelpub.com, Yuan. You are the second person to have learned my dragon's gaze from the Tablet of Comprehension, with the first one being a man named Long Chen. However, his comprehension abilities pale in comparison to yours, as it took him over 3 days to reach this far whilst it took you only a few hours, and he was frozen from shock when he first saw me. The dragon spoke in a deep and profound voice that caused the stars in the surroundings to tremble. Chapter 108 Star. Are you real? Yuan suddenly asked the dragon. No, I am a mere illusion created by the Tablet of Comprehension in this world. However, that is not to say I do not exist, as this is an illusion of my real self. If you manage to reach the upper heavens, then perhaps you will get to see the real me. And when that happens, don't think you'll be able to stand there as calmly as you are now. The dragon spoke in an arrogant voice, sounding as though Yuan had somehow hurt its pride by not cowering in fear from its immense presence like any norm human should. Anyway, enough yapping, human. This great one shall demonstrate to you the power of dragon's gaze. The dragon turned to look at the large planet in the distance and continued, do you see that star? Before the dragon's gaze, it is no different than a little rock. The dragon's golden eyes suddenly flickered with a profound light before shooting out an invisible beam that flew straight at the planet in the distance. A second later, boom! The entire planet that was 10 times larger than Earth exploded into countless fragments before disappearing into the darkness, and the shockwave created by the explosion was powerful enough to send Yuan flying tens of miles backward. Of course, before the dragon's incomprehensible size, it appeared as though Yuan never moved at all. Yuan witnessed this mind-blowing scene with his jaw dropped and his eyes wide open from shock, as he has never seen anything this dramatic before. That is the power of dragon's gaze at its maximum potential. In the beginning, you'll only be able to scare a few people with it, but once you understand the technique more, you'll be able to kill your enemies with a mere gaze. The dragon spoke afterward. Killing people with just my gazes? That sounds incredibly powerful but also extremely dangerous at the same time. Yuan mumbled in a dazed voice. Anyway, can you do that again? I will need to see it a few more times before I can learn it, Yuan then said to the dragon with an innocent expression on his face. This content is taken from l/i//gitnovelpub.com, a few times. Ha 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 ha. The dragon suddenly exploded with laughter, causing the entire starry sky to tremble, and Yuan felt his internal organs dancing around viciously. However, for some odd reason, it didn't hurt him at all. Once the dragon stopped laughing a few moments later, it spoke in a serious voice. Although your comprehension ability may be impressive, don't overestimate yourself, you mere human. The previous human had to watch the technique for hundreds of thousands of times before he could even begin to understand it. And only after watching for a few million more times did he finally understand the technique enough to use it. A few million? But he only had 7 days to study the technique, right? There's no way he could have watched the technique so many times in such a short time. Yuan expressed his doubts. We are currently inside your mind, so time flows differently in here. You can stay in here for a few years if you wish, and only a few hours will have passed in the outside world. The dragon said. What? I can study the technique for a few years while I am here? Yuan mumbled in a dazed voice. Yes. However, your spirit and soul must also be strong enough to endure it, because the longer you stay in here the more exhausting it will be for your body and mind. And you are only a spirit warrior, whilst the previous human was already a spirit grandmaster when he came here. At your level, you will be able to remain inside this space for a few weeks at most, which is only enough to witness a few thousand dragons gaze. A few thousand, huh? That should be more than enough, Yuan nodded with a calm expression on his face. Updated from lightnov/lpub/com. The dragon stared at Yuan with its massive eyes narrowed after hearing his words. After a moment of silence, it spoke. Since you are so confident that you can learn my dragon's gaze so easily, how about a little bet with me, human? A bet? But aren't you only an illusion? Yuan said. I may be an illusion, but I still have some powers in here. Although I may not be able to physically help you, there are other things I can do here. The dragon said. And it continued, as for the bet. If you can learn my dragon's gaze before I demonstrate it a total of 10,000 times, I will consider it your win, and I shall give you something very special. If you lose, well, there's really nothing you can do for me in here, so you won't lose anything for losing the bet. Therefore, you can only gain something from this bet. How about it? Since there was nothing to lose, Yuan nodded. Okay, let's do it. Good. Then watch closely, because I will be demonstrating my dragon's gaze without stopping now. The dragon then turned to look at another planet in the distance that had suddenly appeared out of thin air before using the dragon's gaze once again, obliterating the planet almost instantly. Follow current novels on /li/g/novelpub.com. Whoosh. Yuan was pushed back a few miles again after the explosion, yet he did not blink and stared with an intensive gaze as the dragon continued destroying planets one at a time. Boom. 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 The dragon obliterated a dozen stars in just a few minutes, taking breaks only for a few breaths before its eyes shot out another star-destroying beam, and Yuan witnessed each and every single planet being obliterated without blinking his eyes. Very quickly a couple of days have passed inside his mind, and Yuan has witnessed the dragon's gaze almost 1,000 times. Meanwhile, on the outside, the tablet of comprehension changed colors once again after a few hours of silence, turning bright red this time, shocking Xianxia and those in the spectators' room even more. Chapter 109 State of Enlightenmen. A red light. He's comprehended the technique 70% now. And it's been only a few hours since he comprehended 50%. Just how ridiculously talented is this guy? He puts fast learners to shame with his learning speed. Xianxia could no longer contain her voice and mumbled in a shocked voice. I wonder what it looks like in the spectators' room right now. How are the sect elders reacting to this young man? Xianxia pondered to herself. Meanwhile, in the spectators' room, everybody there turned to look at Elder Xian with a profound expression on their faces, thinking to themselves how Elder Xian will most likely win this gamble and obtain 20 years' worth of contribution points in a single bet. Back inside Yuan's mind, he continued watching the dragon obliterate stars every few breaths until he could see the scene even if he closed his eyes and stopped watching. After spending a few more days inside this special space, Yuan's eyes suddenly turned golden, resembling that of the dragon's eyes. When the dragon noticed the change in Yuan's eyes, it was inwardly shocked by Yuan's progress. This human has already comprehended the dragon's gaze to such an extent? It's only been a week since we started. The dragon cried inwardly. At this rate, I will really lose the bet. To think I, the Great One, would lose to a mere human. Even if it's only something as minor as losing a bet, it's still more than enough for me to lose face. Luckily for me, we are alone here and I am only an illusion, or the other divine beasts would surely turn me into a laughing stock. Why did you stop? Are you tired? Yuan asked the dragon when it suddenly stopped using the dragon's gaze to destroy planets, forcing him out of his trance and halting his progress briefly. No. I am fine. I am only a mere illusion, so I cannot experience exhaustion. Let's continue. The dragon continued shooting invisible beams from its massive eyes that seemed larger than the planets it was destroying a moment later, and Yuan returned to staring at the scene with a dazed expression on his face. Visit /lightnovelpus/b/c/om for a better experience. After watching for a few more hours, Yuan suddenly closed his eyes, yet he could still somehow see the planets being destroyed by the dragon. Enlightenment. This human has entered the state of enlightenment. The dragon realized why Yuan suddenly closed his eyes, yet it did not stop destroying stars. Meanwhile, in the examination room, the tablet of comprehension began changing colors again. The red light grew darker and darker, until it was no longer red and completely pitch black, resembling the void. 80%? Had just reached 70% an hour ago. Why did his progress suddenly increase so exponentially? Xianxia covered her mouth from shock. Even the sect elders in the spectators' room were puzzled by Yuan's results. Could this be enlightenment? One of the sect elders asked in a weird tone, sounding as though he was doubting himself. However, Yuan experiencing enlightenment was the only logical explanation for the sudden change. Of course, enlightenments are incredibly rare moments that most cultivators can live even their entire life without experiencing it a single time. Meanwhile, Yuan was already experiencing his second enlightenment. If the sect elders knew this, they would literally lose their minds, as none of them have experienced the state of enlightenment yet. The source of this content is /lightnovelpub. A few more hours passed inside Yuan's mind, and he suddenly opened his eyes. The second Yuan opened his eyes, a profound ripple appeared around him and spread throughout the endless void, and his golden eyes were glowing brighter than ever before. A notification also appeared before him a moment later. You have learned Dragon's Gaze. Rank, Ancient Mastery Level 1. Description, a technique created by the Great One. A single gaze will cause immortals to bow and the heavens to tremble in fear. Ancient rank? Yuan raised an eyebrow at this unfamiliar rank. Meanwhile, in the outside world, an announcement appeared for all players to witness. Follow current novels on li/ghtn/ovalpub.com. Player Yuan has become the world's first player to have learned an ancient rank skill. Congratulations. This announcement dumbfounded and shocked every player in every location across the world. The players were dumbfounded because they have never heard of an ancient rank skill before until today, and shocked because player Yuan made yet another appearance. Meanwhile, inside the Dragon Essence Temple, the sect elders within the spectators' room were shaking from excitement when the tablet of comprehension suddenly changed colors, turning into a beautiful and majestic golden light. He did it. 90% comprehension. He has reached the founder's results. And he did it in less than 1 day. The sect elders rejoiced as though they were watching their own child. Just 10% more and hell make history. However, overcoming these last 10% is like trying to reach the heavens. It won't be easy at all, and it'll probably be even harder to achieve than the previous 90%. Long Yijuan mumbled with a serious expression on his face. Well, he still has 6 more days to comprehend the last 10%. Even if he doesn't, he's already surpassed the founder in terms of cultivation talent and comprehension skills. We must nurture this young man and spare no expense on him no matter what. Elder Xian spoke with a profound expression on his face. Back inside Yuan's mind, the dragon stared at Yuan with a baffled gaze. 3000. You have managed to learn Dragon's Gaze after watching it less than 3,000 times. Compared to the previous human, you are. No, it would be disrespectful to you if I were to compare you to someone who needed years of effort to learn the technique while you did it in less than a week inside this space. Follow current novels on lightno/ve/pub. How strong is an ancient rank technique? Yuan asked the dragon afterward. The ancient rank is 1 rank above the divine rank. The dragon responded, and it continued, however, even though it's only 1 rank higher, it's countless times stronger than any divine rank technique out there. Chapter 110 Seal of Approval. If you compare ancient rank techniques to divine rank, the difference is like heaven and earth or immortals and mortals. It's so vast that they're almost incomparable. The dragon said to Yuan. However, it will also be much harder to train and master than divine rank techniques. The dragon suddenly stopped talking halfway through its sentence and looked at Yuan with a weird gaze, and then it continued a moment later. Well, knowing your talent, it'll probably be no different than a divine rank technique, and you'll master it incredibly fast. Anyway, you have managed to surpass my expectations, broadened my views with your comprehension talents, and even won a bet against this great one. Therefore, as promised, I shall now bestow you a special reward. The dragon proceeded to close its eyes for a minute. Once the dragon reopened its eyes, a golden beam of light shot out from its eyes and pierced straight into Yuan's forehead. Whoa! After watching the dragon destroy planets with its gaze thousands of times, Yuan naturally responded to the golden beam by jolting his body in a startled manner, even feeling his heart skip a beat. However, when he realized that his body didn't explode like the stars, he released a sigh of relief. A few moments later, once the golden beam disappeared, another notification appeared before Yuan. You have received the Great One's seal of approval. This content is taken from lightnovelpub//com seal of approval. Yuan mumbled, feeling as though nothing about his body had changed after receiving the seal of approval. What can I do with this seal? Yuan asked the dragon afterward. With my seal of approval, you will have a chance to obtain my legacy. The dragon spoke in a calm voice. Legacy. Yuan raised his eyebrows. Is it something like Xiaohua's legacy? The dragon continued to speak a moment later. Go to the dragon temple and find my statue. If you use Dragon's Gaze on the statue, it will activate a hidden formation, which will require the seal of approval to fully activate. As for what comes afterward, you will have to go there and figure it out yourself. If you manage to obtain my legacy, find the real me that exists somewhere in the upper heavens and I will give you a few treasures that will make even powerful immortals drool with envy. However, since I am merely an illusion in this place, the real me won't recognize you, as we have never truly met before. But as long as you have the seal of approval and the legacy, everything should be fine. Do you have any questions, human? No. What is your name? You have earned my respect, so I shall address you as your name. The dragon suddenly said to him. Yuan. My name is Yuan, he responded. Then do you have any questions for me, Yuan? New novel chapters are published on light/novelpub. Calm after pondering for a moment, Yuan asked, I have heard the name Dragon Temple before, but I don't know what it really is. Can you tell me a little bit about the place? What kind of place is the Dragon Temple? The dragon nodded its massive head before speaking. The Dragon Temple is a trial that was created by me, the real me, countless years ago to challenge the geniuses in the lower heavens in hopes of finding someone who can inherit my legacy. There are also some treasures that can be obtained from the Dragon Temple. The Tablet of Comprehension, for example, is a treasure that Long Chen had found in the Dragon Temple from a challenge. Of course, the treasures within the Dragon Temple are worthless compared to the real treasure, my legacy. If they manage to pass all of the challenges, obtain the legacy, and find me in the upper heavens, I shall bestow to them unimaginable wealth and priceless treasures that even immortals and gods covet. However, nobody has managed to find the legacy to this day, much less obtain it. Perhaps you, Yuan, will become the first person to inherit my legacy. Yuan nodded and said, I will try. After a moment of silence, the dragon spoke again, your body can endure a few more weeks in this space. Would you like to continue studying the technique? Yes, let's do this until I have to log off for dinner, Yuan said. Dinner. The dragon looked at Yuan with a puzzled gaze. Sometime later, Yuan returned to watching the dragon obliterating stars with the dragon's gaze, further increasing his understanding of the technique. New novel chapters are published on light/novelpub/com. Meanwhile, inside the spectators' room, the sect elders were in a small conversation. The Tablet of Comprehension is glowing a golden light, meaning that he has reached at least 90% comprehension of the technique. However, since we have never witnessed anyone achieving 100%, we won't be able to tell if he has truly comprehended 100% of the technique or not. The only thing we can do is wait and see the results. Perhaps the color might change again, or something entirely different might happen. We can guess what might happen for as long as we want, but without the results, we will never really know, Long Yijuan said to them. The sect elders nodded, and they returned to staring at the stone tablet for even the slightest change. Time quickly passed for everyone, including Yuan, who got so absorbed in watching the dragon destroying stars that had forgotten about the flow of time. Sometime later in the real world, Yu Rou returned home from school and went straight to Yuan's room with haste, as player Yuan's new achievement was being talked about even at her own school. However, when she entered his room and Yuan didn't greet her, she stopped to ponder. Brother would normally leave the game and wait for me before I even return. Is he still doing the disciple examination? He did learn an ancient rank skill today, so he might still be busy right now. I shouldn't disturb him even if he might miss dinner tonight. Afraid that she might accidentally ruin something for Yuan, Yu Rou decided to leave him alone until he decides to log off himself, and she left the room a few moments later to do other things. Visit lightnovelpub.com for the best novel reading experience. Chapter 111 Talents that will make even the heavens jealous. After learning the ancient rank technique, Dragon's Gaze, Yuan remained inside the special space to further study the technique by watching the Great One continuously destroy planets, and because time flows differently in that space, not to mention his state of enlightenment, Yuan forgot about the passage of time and spent 2 more weeks within the special space without even realizing how much time had passed. Of course, only a little more than half a day had passed in the outside world, so besides missing dinner and breakfast, Yuan didn't really miss out too much. Ding! A system notification suddenly appeared before Yuan, snapping him out of his state of enlightenment. Your comprehension for Dragon's Gaze has reached a new level, Dragon's Gaze Mastery Level, 1, 2, Dragon's Gaze Rank, Ancient Mastery Level, 2 Description, a technique created by the Great One. A single gaze will cause immortals to bow and the heavens to tremble in fear. Visit lightnovelpub // for a better experience. The moment Yuan's mastery level increased, the tablet of comprehension outside began to tremble. When the sect elders noticed this, they exclaimed, something's going to happen. A few seconds later, the tablet of comprehension cracked like a mirror, and just like the silver tree from the third exam, it exploded into many pieces before revealing a golden tablet. A golden tablet? Is this what happens when one comprehends 100% of the technique? Long Yijuan shouted out in sheer excitement. He really did this. This young man really did it. He has achieved the impossible. Heavens! What just happened? Xianxia cried out loud when she saw this, yet she was too nervous to investigate it by herself. Meanwhile, inside Yuan's mind. Ha 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 ha. The dragon suddenly burst with laughter, causing the entire universe to tremble, even shattering a few planets by accident. For more, visit li/nav/lpub.com. You are truly one amusing human, Yuan. I have never seen a mortal with comprehension abilities as ridiculous as yours, not even in the upper heavens. Although there are many cultivation monsters in the upper heavens with heaven-sent talents, they are all immortals and gods, and you are the first spirit warrior that has managed to baffle me speechless in such a manner. The dragon praised Yuan, something it has never done before ever since its creation by the Tablet of Comprehension, and it continued speaking, you have talents that will make even the heavens jealous. However, having such immense talent is not always a good thing, as it can also be a misfortune in the cultivation world where everybody is either plotting or destroying one another, especially the envious humans who will do everything in their power to destroy those superior to them if they have the capabilities. Only those with great talent and a powerful background will truly rise in the cultivation world, whilst everyone will require an immense amount of luck and skills to survive. I don't know your background, but with your talents, I can only imagine how many people will try to destroy you before you become too powerful to stop, especially since you are only a spirit warrior. If I were you, I wouldn't reveal my true talents to everyone and remain as low-key as possible. Yuan nodded, I understand. Anyway, you have only a few more days at most inside this space. What do you want to do? The dragon asked him a moment later. Although not much time has passed in the real world, it still feels as though I had lived here for a few weeks, and I am beginning to miss my sister's voice, so I'll leave now, Yuan said. Very well. I shall let you leave now. The dragon's eyes began glowing. However, before teleporting Yuan away, the dragon said, I truly hope that you will obtain the legacy and meet the real me in the upper heavens. Good luck, Yuan. This content is taken from li/gitnovelpub.com. A moment later, Yuan opened his eyes, and the first thing he noticed was the golden tablet majestically before him. Huh? Yuan raised his eyebrows, unaware why the stone tablet had suddenly turned golden. When Xianxia noticed that Yuan had finally opened his eyes after sitting there for almost 2 days, she called out to him, Are you okay? Yuan turned around to look at the pretty young lady that was approaching him, completely unaware that his eyes were still glowing golden, resembling the eyes of divine beasts. What is this feeling? When Xianxia looked into Yuan's golden eyes, she felt an indescribable sense of fear and despair that filled in her heart that caused her body to tremble. Thud. Xianxia fell on her, but the next second, and a weird sensation could be felt coming from between her legs before a warm sensation followed. The most up-to-date novels are published on /l/l/itnovelpub.com. Don't look at me. Xianxia quickly cried out loud with a flushed face and covered her face with her arms when she realized that she'd accidentally pissed herself after looking into Yuan's eyes that were unknowingly using dragon's gaze. Are you okay? However, Yuan was still unaware that he was naturally using dragon's gaze and approached Xianxia with his golden eyes still glowing brightly. Xianxia quickly realized that blocking Yuan from her views did not help her situation at all when she could still feel his piercing gaze even though she was not looking at him. Stop. Are you doing this on purpose? Stop looking at me and turn around. Xianxia shouted in an angry voice. Okay, although Yuan was puzzled as to why Xianxia was telling him to look away and why she sounded angry, he listened to her and turned around. A few moments later, a portal appeared a few meters away from Yuan, and a couple of figures walked out of the portal. The source of this content is li/gitnovelpub.com, Sect Master. Grand Elder. Xianxia was surprised to suddenly see their faces, but it was not too shocking, as Yuan's results were simply that ridiculous. You can return to your living quarters for now, disciple Xue. However, don't say a single word about what you saw here today. I will speak with you later, Long Yijuan said to her with a serious expression on his face. Chapter 112 End of the Disciple Examination. Why yes, Sect Leader. Xianxia quickly stood up before making her way towards the portal and disappearing from the scene, leaving behind a trail of glistening liquid and a small puddle of clear water. Once Xianxia left the place, Long Yijuan and Elder Xian turned their attention to Yuan, but when they saw his golden eyes behind the black jade mask, their bodies uncontrollably trembled from a dreadful feeling that made them feel as though they were standing before a powerful beast, almost like they were in a life-or-death situation. Despite their cultivation base as spirit masters, they felt helpless before a mere spirit warrior just from his gaze. It was an incomprehensible feeling for the two experts. Taoist Yuan. Can you do something about your eyes? Long Yijuan asked Yuan a moment later with a weird smile on his face. My eyes? What about my eyes? Yuan asked, still unaware that his dragon's gaze was active. It's glowing golden, and it doesn't feel comfortable being stared at by it, Long Yijuan said. Oh, I'm sorry, I didn't know it was active. No wonder why my eyes were feeling a little bit different than usual. Yuan closed his eyes and deactivated the skill. Because he'd gotten used to keeping dragon's gaze activated inside the special space for many days without rest, it felt as natural as breathing, hence why he didn't notice it instantly. Once the golden eyes were gone, Long Yijuan released a relieved sigh before speaking. Hello, Yuan. My name is Long Yijuan, and I am the current sect leader for the Dragon Essence Temple, and this over here is... Elder Xian stepped forward and extended his arm for a handshake. How are you doing, Yuan? My surname is Xian, Xian Zan. Follow current novels on /lightnov/lpub, Xian. Yuan raised his eyebrows after hearing this familiar surname. That's right. I am Xian Wuhan's grandfather. She has already told me about you, Elder Xian said. Oh. So you're Xian Wuhan's grandfather. She also told me to come see you if I ever come to the Dragon Essence Temple. Yuan shook his hand. Yes. If you came to me straight away, I could have made you a disciple right away, and you wouldn't have needed to participate in this examination. With that being said, I am also relieved that you didn't come to me first, or else we would have never realized the full extent of your talents. Elder Xian said with a smile on his face. Long Yijuan suddenly began walking, and he stood before the golden tablet a moment later with his hands caressing the solid tablet with a mesmerizing look on his face. Congratulations, Yuan, or should I call you Disciple Yuan now that you have passed the exam? Either way, you have achieved something nobody, not even our founder could have achieved by comprehending 100% of the technique given to you by the Tablet of Comprehension within 7 days. Hell, you'd even completed it in 2 days. Long Yijuan said to him a moment later. Wait a second, 2 days. I have been here for 2 days? Yuan asked them with a dumbfounded look on his face. Yes. Long Yijuan nodded. Independent Illinois, be right back. Updated from Lee/Gitnovelpub. Yuan immediately logged off to see if Yuro was still around. Yuro? Yuan immediately called for her after logging off. The young lady has already left for school, young master. A clear voice that belonged to a young lady suddenly responded to him, but it was not Yuro's voice. That voice. Is that you, Meisho? Yuan asked. Yes, young master. This is Meisho speaking, she responded. I see. How long have I been in the game? He asked her a moment later. The young master has been playing since yesterday morning, and he's missed 2 meals, last night's dinner and this morning's breakfast. The young lady has ordered me to stand by here just in case you log off and require assistance, Meisho said. Because Meisho was Yuro's personal maid and also the same age as her, Yuro trusted Meisho enough to leave her alone with Yuan, and she would let Meisho take care of Yuan whenever she could not. As for why Meisho wasn't present the previous time Yuro was unable to attend Yuan, it was simply because she was busy with another task. Updated from lightnovelp/u/b, however, it was not only Yuro who trusted Meisho, as Yuan also trusted her, even treating her like a friend, as they have known each other for many years, even before he was crippled. Would you like to eat breakfast, or lunch now, young master? It's okay, I'm not hungry. Since Ro has already gone to school, I will return to the game for now. You don't need to stay here either, Yuan said to her. I cannot do that, as the young lady has specifically ordered me to stay here until she returns, Meisho said. You're just like your mother, always so serious with your job, even though you're around the same age as Ro. It's admirable, really. Thank you for your compliments, young master. I'll go now. You can do whatever you want. After saying that, Yuan went back into the cultivation world. After returning back to the cultivation world, Long Yijuan continued speaking to Yuan as though had never left in the first place. Not only have you achieved something nobody has ever achieved before, but you have done it in an unbelievably short time. If I didn't witness your results with my own eyes, I wouldn't have believed it even if someone beats me to death. However, while your achievements are definitely incredible, we also have to keep it a secret for now, or it might bring you, even the Dragon Essence Temple, unnecessary trouble. I will explain more to you later, but for now, let's get you out of this place. Visit/lightnovel/pub.com for the best novel reading experience. What about the special jade slip? Yuan suddenly asked him. Ha ha ha. Don't worry about something like that. I have already decided to let you enter the Dragon Temple. Long Yijuan said, and he continued, come, let's continue our conversation somewhere more comfortable. Chapter 113, Introducing himself. After passing the final exam and meeting Long Yijuan and Elder Xian, Yuan followed them out of the examination area through the portal and straight into the spectators' room with the other sect elders present. Where is this? Yuan looked around the unfamiliar scenery. This is the spectators' room, where high-ranking sect elders can watch the disciple examination and see if there are any talented participants they can accept as disciples. Long Yijuan said. Hello, Taoist Yuan. Why don't you be my disciple? I can promise you that we'll have a good time together, one of the female sect elders, who had a mature and enchanting figure, suddenly said to Yuan with an alluring gaze, even winking her bright eyes at him. How shameless of you, Elder Shan. The sect master and grand elder are present, you know. Another sect elder quickly scolded her. So what? It's not like they don't already know my character. Elder Shan shrugged, and she continued, furthermore, someone as talented as Yuan. I would do anything to make him my disciple, hee. Elder Shan glared at Yuan with a hungry look on her beautiful face, almost like a predator before its prey. Yuan swallowed nervously when he saw this, as he has never been glared at with such a chilling gaze before. You're scaring him, Elder Shan. Elder Xian said to her, and he continued, I know you all want him to be your disciple, but we can talk about that later. For now, let's make sure he's comfortable and understands the situation that we're in. Sometime later, Yuan took a seat with the others sitting around him. This content is taken from light/nov/l/pub. For starters, let's introduce ourselves. Long Yijuan said. Once again, I am Long Yijuan, the current sect master of the Dragon Essence Temple. Elder Xian went next and said, I am one of 3 grand elders, Xian Zan. The mature female elder then said, surnamed Shan Shang, and I am in charge of the core disciples. If you are ever feeling lonely or bored, come find me, okay, Taoist Yuan? I'll entertain you. After a moment of awkward silence, the next elder in the room spoke, Xian Ming, and I am also in charge of the core disciples alongside Elder Shan. Bai Ling, and I am in charge of the disciplinary hall. If you ever run into trouble, whether it be with another disciple or a sect elder, you can come find me. Long Yijuan then said, there are a few more sect elders that had seen your performance from this place, but they had to leave early for other duties. Would you like to introduce yourself? A brief introduction about yourself and a little about why you decided to join our Dragon Essence Temple. Yuan nodded and took off his black jade mask, revealing to them his handsome and young face. Oh my. You're much younger and more handsome than I'd expected. I am definitely going to make you my disciple now. Elder Shan's eyes flickered with excitement after seeing Yuan's face, and she even licked her lips in a weird manner. Updated from L/Itnov/Lpub, Yuan tried his best to ignore the weird woman and said, "My name is Yuan, and I am 18 years old. I have only recently become a cultivator and I want to learn more about the cultivation world, so I came to the Dragon Essence Temple to broaden my views." To Yuan's surprise, nobody there responded to him, and they all stared at him with wide eyes filled with shock. "Why, you're only 18 years old? And you became a cultivator only recently? How recently are we talking about?" "A few years ago." Long Yijuan was the first to snap out of his daze and ask Yuan. "No, I became a cultivator only a few weeks ago," Yuan responded with an innocent-looking expression on his face. "A few weeks ago?" Everybody in the room simultaneously exclaimed in a shocked voice, with one of them even breaking his chair and falling onto the floor. "Just where on earth did you come from? If you don't mind, can you tell us your background? Which powerful family do you belong to? I can promise you that it won't leave this room, and no matter where you came from, we don't treat you any different. I swear on it as the Sect Master of the Dragon Essence Temple." Long Yijuan asked him in a nervous voice. "Why does everyone think I am from a powerful family?" Yuan responded with puzzlement, and he continued, "I don't belong to any powerful family. The most up-to-date novels are published on //lee/gitnovelpub/com. How is that possible? What about your parents? They must be powerful cultivators, right?" Elder Xian asked him next. "No, my parents are not cultivators. They are musicians," Yuan said. Since he didn't have a family in this world, he told them about his family in the real world. "What? Your parents are mortals? And they gave birth to a cultivation prodigy like you? What are the heavens thinking?" Long Yijuan cried out loud. It was as though the heavens created a cultivation prodigy like Yuan just to mess with every cultivator in the world. Not only is Yuan from a common background and a family of mortals, but he has talents that surpass even the founder of the Dragon Essence Temple, who was once recognized as the #1 expert in the entire lower heavens. If this is not spitting in the face of every cultivator, especially those born from a powerful family, then what is? If what you say is true, and I don't mean to doubt you, then we have a serious issue at hand. Long Yijuan spoke a moment later with a serious expression on his face. The other sect elders also nodded their heads with grim looks on their faces, instantly turning the atmosphere heavy. Why would it be an issue that I am not from a powerful family?" Yuan asked, still unaware of the situation he was in. "Well, to put it simply, there will be countless people who will become envious of your talents, and because you have no powerful family backing you, there will be nothing to stop these people from trying to harm you, destroy you before you can grow too powerful," Long Yijuan said to him. Chapter 114: The Importance of Having a Strong Backing. You wish to learn more about the cultivation world, right? Well, the first thing you need to know about the cultivation world is its brutal and unforgiving nature. Long Yijuan continued. There are many selfish and cold-hearted cultivators out there who are without reason and will do everything in their power to bully those weaker than themselves and try to destroy those above them if they get the chance. This is why it's extremely important to have a powerful backer or an influential background, especially if you are talented, as they will be able to protect you to a certain extent, and the more powerful your backing, the safer you'll be in the cultivation world. This is another reason why many cultivators aim for the most prestigious sects, as that will make them feel safer. If you don't have a strong backing or come from a powerful family, other cultivators will be able to bully you without needing to worry about the repercussions. If you have a powerful background, on the other hand, people will have to think twice before they want to mess with you. Do you now understand why it's so important to have a backing and connections in the cultivation world? Cultivators, they can be heartless and selfish creatures that will do anything to achieve their own goals, even if they have to drag down others in order to do so. I see. The dragon also said the same thing, but it didn't go into too much depth. Yuan thought to himself after hearing Long Yijuan's long explanation on why it was important for him to have a strong backing. I understand, Yuan nodded afterward. Long Yijuan continued to speak a moment later. Now back to our situation. You have immense talent, talents that will make many cultivators jealous, yet you do not come from a powerful family that can protect you, hence why it's a problem. While the Dragon Essence Temple can protect you to a certain extent, and we will do everything in our power to protect you as long as you are a disciple here, there are no guarantees, as there are powerful factions and cultivators out there in this vast world that even we cannot deal with. Therefore, I suggest hiding your real talent from the world until you have sufficient backings. Of course, that is not to say you shouldn't show off your talents, just overdo it, like what you did during the third and final exam. For more, visit lightnovelpub.com. Yuan nodded. Now on to the second matter. Elder Xian, do you want to take over? Long Yijuan asked him. Elder Xian nodded before looking at Yuan and speaking. You said that you came to the Dragon Essence Temple for experience, right? I have heard from my granddaughter about how you do not want to be restricted like normal disciples and wish to travel freely. Normally, only core disciples will have such luxury, but we will make it an exception for you since you are already at the core disciples level. Although you have just passed the examination and become a disciple, it would make no sense to make someone at your cultivation level an outer court, even an inner court disciple. However, with that being said, we also cannot just make you a core disciple, as that has never happened before and it would upset many of the core disciples. Therefore, we'll make you an outer court disciple in name so that you can experience the sect from the beginning exactly like you wanted while giving you core disciple privileges and benefits, so you'll actually be a core disciple disguised as an outer court disciple until you pass the core disciple examination and become one officially. How does that sound, everyone? Elder Xian asked the others for their feedback. That sounds pretty interesting, Elder Shan said, and she continued, we can keep him hidden from our enemies since they tend to only look at the inner disciples and core disciples. I also approve of this. However, how are we going to hide his cultivation base? Elder Xian asked. I will handle that, Elder Shan said. I have a pill that'll disguise his real cultivation base and make him appear much weaker than he actually is. Visit lie/novelp/ub.com for a better experience. Long Yijuan looked at Yuan and asked him, are you okay with being an outer court disciple for now? If you wish, we can make you an inner court disciple instead. However, Yuan shook his head and said, I want to experience a normal sect life as intended, which means I start from the bottom and walk my way to the top. While it was a little too late for Yuan to live a normal sect life, Long Yijuan and the other sect elders did not say anything and decided to let Yuan live that illusion for now. Then it's decided. Starting today, you will be an outer court disciple, but if you ever need something, anything at all, just let one of us know and we'll assist you to the best of our abilities without making it too obvious. We'll give you our communication jade slip later so you can contact us whenever you feel the need. Long Yijuan said. A moment later, Long Yijuan continued, Disciple Yuan, I have two more important matters to discuss with you before I can let you go, so bear with me. The first one is about a place called Mystic Realm that we plan on having you participate in next month, and the second matter is about the Dragon Temple that will most likely happen after the Mystic Realm. Mystic Realm. What's that? Yuan asked. To put it simply, it's a massive competition that happens only once every 10 years where all of the elite sects from around the world send their most talented disciples to participate in the Mystic Realm, a mysterious place that contains many challenges and treasures, and the higher your sect ranks the more rewards and fame you'll obtain. Long Yijuan explained. And he continued a moment later in a passionate voice, our Dragon Essence Temple ranked 7th for the last event, but with you on our side this year, I have no doubt that we'll achieve at least top 3. Chapter 115 Accepting a Master. Every sect will be given a certain amount of slots depending on their results from the previous competition, and we managed to secure 3 slots for this year's Mystic Realm, Long Yijuan said. One of those spots will be given to you. Of course, we're not going to ask you to participate without anything in return, so we'll give you full access to the Profound Pavilion, where you can learn all kinds of techniques between the mortal rank to earth rank. There are also a few heaven rank techniques available, but you'll need to be accompanied by one of us in order to access those. Furthermore, whatever you obtain from the mystic realm, well, let you keep them. Normally, the disciples are required to hand in the treasures they find inside the mystic realm, but well, make it an exception for you. What do you think? Are you willing to participate in the mystic realm for the Dragon Essence Temple? Long Yijuan asked him afterward. Yuan nodded without hesitation, sure. I don't mind participating. Since there was no reason for him to refuse, and he was curious about this mystic realm, Yuan accepted their request. Great. Then let's talk about the Dragon Temple. The Dragon Temple is a mythical place discovered by our founder, Long Chen, and he built the Dragon Essence Temple around it in order to protect it. It's a mysterious place with many challenging tests, and you'll be rewarded for passing those tests. The only reason why we are not sending more disciples in there is simply because it requires a tremendous amount of resources and effort to open the place for even a single person, and there's a high chance the Dragon Temple might refuse entrance if you are not talented enough, hence why we only allow those who have exceptional results during the disciple examination to enter the Dragon Temple. Long Yijuan explained to him. You wish to enter the Dragon Temple, right? Yes, I do. Yuan nodded. Visit lightnovelp.com for a better experience, then I'll immediately start preparing for it now. It should be ready for you shortly after the Mystic Realm if I begin now. That's just how much effort is required to open it. Do you have any questions for us? Long Yijuan asked him a moment later. No, not really. Yuan shook his head. Good, then we can finally. Wait a second. Elder Shan suddenly interrupted Long Yijuan. What's the matter, Elder Shan? They looked at her with raised eyebrows. We still haven't decided on who should be Yuan's master, and I would like to volunteer, she said with a stern expression on her face. Updated from l/itnovelpub//com. The place quickly became silent, as the sect elders there were well aware of Elder Shan's stubborn character. If she truly wanted Yuan to become her disciple, it'll be near impossible to make her give up. Why don't we let the young man himself decide such an important matter? Elder Xian said, and he turned to look at Yuan. What do you think, Disciple Yuan? Although disciples are not required to have a master, it's highly recommended that you get one, as they can provide you with resources and advice for your cultivation. Furthermore, having a master is also considered as having a backing within the sect. How about it, little brother? Why don't you come with this big sister here? I'll promise you that you'll never have a boring day when you're my disciple. Elder Shan suddenly stood up and approached Yuan with weird leg movements, appearing incredibly tempting and seductive with every step, and even the other sect elders couldn't help but swallow nervously after seeing her feminine charm. I have only ever accepted female disciples before, but I'll make it an exception for you. My disciples are also very beautiful and popular in the sect with countless admirers, so if you become my disciple, you'll get to meet with them often. Elder Shan walked behind Yuan and leaned on him with her large and heavy racks pressing down on top of Yuan's head. Yuan was speechless. Although he does not understand why Elder Shan was acting so weird and clingy, his heart felt an indescribable sense of danger when around her, almost like a baby rabbit before a hungry tiger. Forget about her, young man. Become my, Xian Ming's disciple. Although she may look very young and attractive, don't let her appearance deceive you, as she's actually an old hag over 300 years old. Who are you calling an old hag, you wrinkly old man? Elder Shan quickly removed one of her shoes and tossed it at Elder Xian with an enraged look on her face. How dare you throw your smelly shoes at me? Elder Xian exclaimed. The source of this content is lie/t/novelp/ub/com, hahaha. Ignore those two idiots, Brother Yuan. I can see clear righteousness coming from your eyes, and I believe that you'll fit in at our disciplinary hall perfectly. Bai Ling laughed out loud. Disciple Yuan, you are not limited to just sect elders, you know? If you want, I can also accept you as my disciple, Long Yijuan suddenly said. Though, with your monstrous comprehension abilities, I doubt any of us will be your master for long, he continued with a bittersweet smile on his face. Sometime later, Elder Shan asked Yuan, what do you think, little brother? Who do you want as a master? After a moment of silence, Yuan spoke, "Since I cannot really decide, can I just accept all of you as my master?" "You want all of us?" You're quite the greedy one, but that's fine too." Elder Shan chuckled after hearing his answer. "Can I not have more than one master?" Yuan asked. Although not very common, it's normal for disciples to have more than one master at a time since it's not possible to learn everything from one master. Though I don't think there has been a disciple who has had the sect master and many high-ranking sect elders as master simultaneously before. Elder Xian said to him. This content is taken from lightnovelpub/c/om. Then again, you are not a normal disciple, and there'll always be a first for everything, just like how you demonstrated during the disciple examination. Chapter 116 Pill of Concealmen. So, does everyone here agree to have disciple Yuan as their disciple? Long Yijuan asked them a moment later, and he continued, "I'll be completely honest, his talent is simply too much for us to keep to ourselves, so instead of being selfish, it's best if we all contribute to teaching him about the cultivation world for the best results. After all, it might affect his growth negatively if he has only one master." "I have no qualms about that decision," Bai Ling said with a calm expression on his face. "Me neither," Elder Xian said. Everyone there then turned to look at Elder Shan, who held a hard-to-read expression on her beautiful face. After a moment of silence, she sighed out loud, "Fine, I'll share him. Although I'd rather keep him for myself, what the sect master said makes sense. I doubt I'll be able to train someone as talented as him properly, and it'll only slow down his progress." Sometime later, Long Yijuan and the other sect elders there handed Yuan their communication jade slip so that Yuan could communicate with them whenever he wanted. "By the way, is there anything that I need to do now that I have accepted all of you as my master?" Yuan asked them. "What about the lectures? We do give private lectures to our disciples every month and public lectures once a year, but you are not required to attend either of them. If you have any questions regarding cultivation or need resources for cultivation, you can just let us know using the communication jade slip. Furthermore, because you are still only an outer disciple, we'll avoid physically meeting with each other as much as possible since we don't normally communicate with disciples in person, and I don't want the other disciples thinking that we are favoring you too much, as that might affect the entire sect as a whole." Long Yijuan said to him. "I understand." Yuan nodded. "Erase a few more things before we let you go." Elder Xian then handed Yuan 2 separate medallions. The most up-to-date novels are published on lightnov/lpub. c/om. The silver medallion will allow you to go to the treasury hall and obtain as many resources as you need for your cultivation. Just don't overdo it, as we don't have an unlimited supply of resources. I will speak with the elder in charge there and let him know of your existence to avoid any problems. As for the gold medallion, that'll grant you full access to the profound pavilion. I'll also let the elder in charge of that place know about you. Don't lose them, it'll be problematic if someone that's not supposed to have them gets a hold of them." "I won't lose them," Yuan said with a serious expression on his face. Sometime later, Elder Shan said to Yuan, "Come with me, little brother. I still have to give you the pill that'll disguise your real cultivation base. However, I don't have it on me, so we'll have to get it in my room." "Okay." Yuan nodded innocently without thinking too much about it. However, Elder Xian blocked Yuan's path and said to Elder Shan, "You can go back by yourself and return here once you have the pill. I don't trust you one bit with him, especially if you'll be alone with him. Who knows what you'll do to this innocent boy when you're alone with him?" You are thinking too lowly of me, Elder Xian. Do you really believe that I would lay my hands on my own disciple?" Elder Shan sighed with a disappointed look on her face, and she continued, "Despite my character, I am still a maiden, you know?" "Humph." Elder Xian coldly snorted, not even bothering to answer her. The source of this content is light/n/ovalpub. Fine. I'll be right back. Elder Shan shook her head before leaving the building. While Elder Shan left to grab the pill, Long Yijuan handed Yuan a medallion of his own and said, "This is the absolute authority medallion, and only the sect master can hand it out. As long as you have this, nobody in the sect will dare to touch you. However, don't go flaunting it every chance you get and only use it during emergencies, and of course, don't lose it." "Thank you," Yuan nodded as he tossed another medallion into his spatial ring. Once Elder Shan returned a few minutes later, she handed Yuan a black pill the size of a fingernail. "Eat this and nobody but spirit masters and above will be able to tell your real cultivation base." Elder Shan handed him the pill. Pill of Concealment, Tier 2, Purity, 92%, Effects, temporarily conceals your cultivation base by 7 levels for 30 days, Description, only works if you are below Spirit Master. After tossing the pill into his mouth and swallowing it with the help of some water, Yuan could feel his aura being suppressed, yet his strength remained the same. This content is taken from lightnovel/pub////com. There, now you're only a 7th level spirit apprentice, just enough to qualify as an inner disciple, Elder Shan said afterward. Sometime later, Long Yijuan opened another portal to the disciple examination and said to Yuan, "Once you return to the examination, just enter the gate behind the tablet of comprehension and you'll be teleported to the gathering area where everyone that has passed the examination will be gathered. Here is your token, it's proof that you have passed the disciple examination. Although we won't see each other for a while, we'll always be watching over you, so go ahead and enjoy life as a disciple until the mystic realm," Elder Xian said to him. "Good luck, Brother Yuan," Bai Ling said to him. "Try not to cause too much trouble," Elder Xian said with a smile. Lastly, Elder Shan said to him before kissing the palm of her hands and blowing it towards his direction, "If you are ever feeling lonely, come find me at Blossom Peak. I will see you all later, seniors. Thank you for everything so far." Yuan bowed to them before entering the portal and disappearing from the room. Chapter 117 Golden Symbols. Once Yuan entered the portal and disappeared from the spectators' room, Long Yijuan and all of the sect elders there sat down in a chair with an exhausted expression on their faces. Heavens! That was exhausting. Elder Xian was the first to speak there, and he continued a moment later, "It's really difficult being around a genius like Yuan. There's simply something about his aura that frightens me. You got that feeling too? Although I cannot tell what it is, there's something fearsome hidden within Yuan, and it felt like there were always 2 pairs of eyes watching me at all times." Long Yijuan said with his back soaked in sweat. "Perhaps I'm just imagining things, and it's just his natural aura. There will soon be a massive ripple sweeping the entire cultivation world, especially after the mystic realm, when Yuan's existence will be known to the rest of the world and to all of the elite sects out there, and we'll need to be prepared before that happens, or our Dragon Essence Temple will be in danger," Elder Xian said to them with a serious expression on his face. "Yes, this is a serious risk that our Dragon Essence Temple is taking, but this is what usually happens when an extraordinary genius appears in the cultivation world," Long Yijuan said, and he continued, "However, we cannot be afraid to take risks, or our Dragon Essence Temple will never stand at the top again. By the way, I just realized this, but we never asked Yuan what kind of cultivation technique he had received from the Tablet of Comprehension. Since his examination results were on the founder's level, there's a high chance that he had learned the same technique our founder learned, a divine rank technique if the rumors are correct." Bai Ling suddenly said to them. "There's no need to ask him since I witnessed it for myself," Long Yijuan said. "Really? What kind of technique did he learn?" Bai Ling asked with a curious look on his face. Long Yijuan closed his eyes to recall Yuan's golden eyes before speaking a moment later, "The technique our founder used to dominate the lower heavens. It was an otherworldly technique that allowed him to completely freeze his opponent's movements by instilling deep fear into their very soul with a mere gaze, right? According to some of the records that were written by witnesses that have seen our founder's battles, our founder's eyes would glow golden whenever he activates this technique. And when I met Yuan for the first time after he finished his exam, his eyes were glowing golden, and it was able to make even a peak spirit master such as myself experience fear." For more, visit lightnovelpub.com/c//om. The place quickly turned silent after Long Yijuan ended his sentence. If Yuan really learned the Founder's technique, there's a very high chance that Hell dominate the lower heavens like the Founder had. It's only a matter of when Hell achieve it, Elder Shan said with a serious look on her face for once. Therefore, we should protect him at all cost. I agree with Elder Shan. Our Founder was so talented during his time that there hasn't been anyone who managed to reach his heights even 100,000 years later. If Yuan, who has talents that surpass even the Founder, we must make sure he grows up properly. Bai Ling said. If we can protect Yuan until he can dominate the lower heavens, our Dragon Essence Temple will once again rise to the top. If we fail, however, our Dragon Essence Temple might crumble. Elder Xian said with a pondering expression on his face. Is there even a need to think about this? Of course, we will protect Yuan even if we have to risk the entire Dragon Essence Temple. I'm sure the Founder would also say the same if he was here. Long Yijuan stood up and said. I agree with the Sect Master. Who knows what other talents Yuan might be hiding, Elder Xian said. Then it's decided. Well, protect Yuan at all costs, Elder Xian and Elder Bai nodded their heads. Someone who's even more talented than our Founder, huh? I can already imagine how the ladies will react once they learn about Yuan. Therefore, I should take advantage of my situation and be the first to act. Elder Shan chuckled with a weird expression on her face. Do you have no shame, Elder Shan? You're already 300 years old while Yuan is merely 18 years old. Hell choose your disciples before he even considers you. Elder Xian laughed out loud. The source of this content is //Lee/Gitnovelpub. C/OM, one's age becomes inconsequential when you are both cultivators, especially at the higher levels. You're just jealous that I am going after Yuan while I rejected you 200 years ago. Elder Shan looked at Elder Xian with a smirk on her face. Elder Xian became speechless after being reminded of his youthful days when he was infatuated with Elder Shan but was ultimately rejected by her. Did you really have to bring that up? That's very underhanded of you. He sighed a moment later. Meanwhile, after entering the portal, Yuan returned to the examination hall with the golden tablet of comprehension still standing there. Yuan approached the golden tablet and bowed it. Thank you for everything. I will try my best to find your legacy in the Dragon Temple and meet the real you somewhere in the upper heavens. The tablet of comprehension suddenly trembled, and the symbols on the tablet began moving, before emerging from the golden tablet and flying directly at Yuan's body, submerging itself within his body. What the? Yuan patted his body after the symbols disappeared into his body. Oddly enough, he didn't feel any different, nor did any notifications pop up, so he has no clue as to what had just happened. Follow current novels on lightnovel/pub//com. Meanwhile, inside Yuan's body, golden symbols appeared on all of his bones, yet neither Xiao Hua nor Feng Yixiao could see or sense the golden symbols. Sometime later, Yuan left the examination hall through the gate, becoming the first person to complete the disciple examination. Chapter 118 Becoming a Disciple. After passing through the gate, Yuan was transported to a gathering area somewhere in the outer areas of the Dragon Essence Temple. What? You have passed the exam already? What's your name? And let me see your token. The sect elders in charge of the new disciples were dumbfounded when they saw Yuan appearing from the gates, as the other participants are still in the final examination trying to comprehend their techniques, and even if some of them have already managed to comprehend 10% before the 7-day period, they would always try to study the technique as much as they can before their time is up. Here you go. My name is Yuan. Yuan showed the sect elders the token that proved that had indeed passed the examination. Once the sect elders confirmed the integrity of the token, they said to Yuan, very well. Come with me to gather your uniform and identification token. Yuan proceeded to follow the sect elder into this building where he was handed 3 sets of outer court disciple uniforms. How old are you and what is your cultivation base? The sect elder then asked him. 18 years old, 7th level spirit apprentice, Yuan responded. 7th level spirit apprentice? That's pretty high for your age, and you are already qualified to take the Inner Court Disciple examination. However, you must be a disciple for at least a month before you can take the exam. Visit Lightnovelpub.com for a better experience. After recording Yuan's information into a logbook, the sect elder handed Yuan his identification token and another item before speaking. This is the Dragon Essence Temple's rule book. It contains everything you can and cannot do as a disciple of the sect. If you break any rules, you'll be sent to the disciplinary hall for punishment. If you break enough rules or one major rule, your disciple status will be renounced and you will no longer be a disciple of the sect, and worst case scenario, you'll have your cultivation crippled before being thrown out with death even a possibility. Therefore, I highly urge you to read and memorize the entire rule book. I understand, Yuan nodded. Also, there will be a small lecture that will be held later that all newly accepted disciples must attend before they are allowed into the sect, as it will teach you more about the sect and things you are expected to do as a disciple. However, since you have finished the examination much faster than others, you'll have to wait a few days until the disciple examination ends. The sect elder then pointed to a long building with many doors not too far away from them and said, "You can stay in one of those rooms until then. The lecture will happen in 7 days when the examination officially ends. Take this time to read the rule book." Okay. Thank you, Senior. Yuan bowed to the sect elder before going into one of the rooms. Once he was inside the room, Yuan looked at the small place with a speechless look on his face. There was barely any free space in the room, and besides a small bed that could not really be called a bed because it was completely made of stone, and the toilet, there was nothing else in the room. I am supposed to live here for an entire week? This is ridiculous. Yuan sighed loudly before sitting on the cold, hard bed. Luckily for him, he can simply log off the game and wait in the real world inside his comfortable room. However, such a thing was impossible for the people of this world, and Yuan pitied them. Congratulations on passing the disciple examination and becoming a disciple of the Dragon Essence Temple, Brother Yuan. Xiao Hua's voice suddenly resounded inside Yuan's head. Updated from lightnovelpub // Oh, Xiao Hua. Thank you. And it feels like it's been forever since I last heard your voice, Yuan said. Xiao Hua is always with Brother Yuan, and she's always watching him, Xiao Hua said. Congratulations, young master, it seems like you have learned another powerful technique, Feng Yixio's voice resounded next. Thank you, Feng Feng. Because most of the events had happened inside Yuan's mind, neither Xiao Hua nor Feng Yixiao knew about the Great One or anything that happened inside the special space. After talking with Xiao Hua and Feng Yixiao for a few minutes, Yuan retrieved the Dragon Essence Temple rule book and began reading through it thoroughly, not daring to miss a single sentence, as he didn't want to accidentally break any rules. No fighting between disciples. If you have a problem with another disciple, settle it on the stage after notifying a sect elder. Offenders will be punished with 3 months of solitary confinement in the disciplinary cave. Murder, rape, and other similar disgraceful behaviors will not be tolerated in this sect. Offenders will have their cultivation crippled and their disciple status renounced. Any degree of betrayal towards the sect will be punished with execution by beheading. The source of this content is lightnovel/pu//b. Yuan spent almost the rest of his time playing to read and memorize the rule book that had a little over 100 pages. Once it was time for dinner, Yuan logged off the game and waited for Yuro to return. Brother, are you still playing the game? Yuro asked him after entering his room. I'm here, Yuro, and I would like to apologize for missing dinner and breakfast. I got too caught up with the disciple examination that I forgot about the time, Yuan said in an apologizing tone. Don't worry about it, brother. I'll forgive you since you appeared on the announcement again after learning an ancient rank skill. Tell me all about it when I come back with your dinner, okay? Okay. Yuro then left the room to prepare for his dinner. Half an hour later, Yuro returned to his room, and Yuan began telling her about everything he's experienced in the examination, including his encounter with the Great One and its legacy. Chapter 119 Outer Court Disciple. Do you need more food, brother? You did miss last night's dinner and today's breakfast, after all. Yuro asked him after feeding him 3 bowls of soup. Thank you, and no, I don't, Yuan said. Okay, then I'll leave you alone for now. After Yuro left the room, Yuan began cultivating by absorbing the spiritual energy in the room, and he would cultivate until the following morning when Yuro returned to his room with breakfast in her hands. After breakfast, Yuan went back into to check whether there were more people who'd passed the examination, but alas, there has yet to be another participant who'd passed the disciple examination besides him. Seeing this, Yuan went back into his small room and reread the rule book one more time before logging off and spending the rest of his time cultivating in the real world. Yuan would repeat this for the next 4 days until he could finally see other participants who had passed the examination appear at the gathering area, and had also managed to reach the 6th spirit apprentice during this time. However, since there are still 3 days before the lecture, Yuan did not linger around and logged off to cultivate some more in the real world. After waiting for a grand total of 7 days, once the disciple examination had officially ended and all of the participants had passed the exam gathered in the Dragon Essence Temple, Yuan finally emerged from his small room and blended in with the crowd of new disciples while waiting for the lecture to begin. There were a little over 300 disciples there, and considering how there were tens of thousands of people that had participated in the disciple examination from the beginning, it showed just how difficult the disciple examination truly was to the rest of the world. Visit li/gitnov/lpub.com for a better experience. Yuan looked around, and there were a few familiar faces that he recognized from the disciple examination, and one of them was Fairy Min, who had displayed an impressive performance during the 3rd examination and definitely one of the most prominent figures there. Meanwhile, Fairy Min was also looking around with her small head turning left and right, seemingly trying to find a certain individual. However, when she couldn't see this person she was looking for, a puzzled and surprised look appeared on her face. Where is that person with the black jade mask? Surely, he didn't fail the disciple examination, right? Not only was he a spirit warrior but he also had an unfathomable aura. There's no way someone like that could possibly fail the disciple examination. Minli pondered to herself when she could not see a man wearing a black jade mask in the crowd. However, little did she know that Yuan was standing only a few feet away from her. Though, not only did Yuan change his appearance but he also consumed the pill of concealment that disguised his cultivation and aura, so it was only natural that Minli did not recognize him. After standing around for a few minutes, one of the sect elders appeared before them and said, "All of you new disciples, follow me to the lecture site." "Yes, senior." The disciples then followed the sect elder like a group of ducklings. Sometime later, they arrived at this large building and entered it. Once inside, they all took a seat and waited for the sect elder. The most up-to-date novels are published on /l/itnovelp/ub.com. First and foremost, allow me to congratulate you all on passing the disciple examination and becoming a disciple of the Dragon Essence Temple. Out of 54,000 cultivators that participated in the disciple examination, only 310 of you have managed to become a disciple. This is something you should be proud of. For this lecture, I'll be talking mostly about a few sect rules and a few general things you need to know as a disciple of the Dragon Essence Temple. Let me begin with your status as an outer court disciple. While you are a disciple of the Great Dragon Essence Temple and you should feel proud, just remember that there is always someone better than you and that you are only an outer court disciple. If you see a senior, be it a fellow disciple or a sect elder, be courteous and greet them. If a senior asks you a question, answer them. In the cultivation world and not just the sect, respecting your seniors will go a long way. As an outer court disciple, do not expect any support from the sect when it comes to resources until you are an inner court disciple. If you want resources, work for them. The Dragon Essence Temple has over 100,000 disciples, which means resources are scarce and only those who are worthy will be supported. Although you may have become a disciple, you have not yet contributed to the sect, so do not expect the sect to hand out free food. Now many of you should be wondering how you can obtain resources in the sect. Allow me to introduce you to the Contribution Hall, where you can spend your contribution points for resources and treasures alike. There are 3 different contribution halls, each located within their own court, so the outer court will have their own contribution hall whilst inner court will also have one. The difference between each contribution halls are the resources you can obtain from them, meaning you will be able to obtain more valuable treasures in the inner court compared to the outer court, as this is a privilege for those who'd earned it and an incentive for you to climb higher in the sect and the cultivation world. The disciples swallowed nervously after hearing the sect elder's words. How does one obtain contribution points, senior? One of the disciples raised his hands to ask. The most up-to-date novels are published on lightnov/elpu/b. There are many methods you can use to obtain contribution points. You do missions for the sect, you sell treasures you don't need, and you can even ask for them from your fellow disciples, said the sect elder. Chapter 120 Their first lecture. What kind of missions do we have to do, senior? And where do we accept these missions? Another disciple asked after the sect elder stopped talking. You can find and accept all kinds of missions at the mission hall. Every mission inside the mission hall are requests from the people in the outside world, so you will obtain more than just contribution points from the sect, which is basically a little bonus from the sect, explained the sect elder. I should also let you know that as outer court disciples, you are obligated to complete at least one mission every 3 months, so quarterly. Failure to do so will result in punishment that is usually in the form of a fine, so you'll have to pay contribution points. There are a variety of missions with their own difficulties, so you can choose to do easy missions that require no skills like cleaning dishes for some restaurant or the more difficult missions that require you to hunt specific magical beasts for their materials. Of course, the harder the mission the more rewarding it will be at the end. However, don't chew more than you can bite, as there have been plenty of incidents that resulted in the deaths of disciples because the disciple arrogantly or ignorantly tried to challenge something they have no qualifications to even challenge. Sometime later, the sect elder continued, Okay, I think I have covered enough about contribution points. Now let's talk about what the sect of you as outer court disciples. First and foremost, you are not allowed to leave the sect without permission from the sect unless you are on a mission, and only inner court disciples and above are allowed to leave the sect as they please. If you need to go somewhere, you must go to the reception hall and state your reason for leaving the sect. If the sect deems it reasonable, they will allow you to leave. If you are outside on a mission, you are not allowed to wander too much. If you leave the sect for too long without any accountability and for an unreasonably long amount of time, the sect will deem you as a deserter or dead and revoke your disciple status. This is mostly to prevent the outer court disciples from getting out of hand in the outside world. You guys are no longer mortals but cultivators, disciples of an elite sect. Therefore, you must learn to separate yourself from the mortal world. If you encounter trouble with other cultivators while you are outside, try to solve it peacefully, especially if the opposite party belongs to another elite sect. While it's very common for disciples from other sects to fight each other and our sect does not forbid fighting against others, you should know that there are people and places you cannot offend. Just keep that in mind because the Dragon Essence Temple is not invincible in this vast cultivation world. After talking about a few more things regarding their status as outer court disciples, the sect elder began talking about a few rules for the sect. Follow current novels on lightnovelpub. This can be found in your rule book, but I am still going to mention it because it still happens very often between disciples from all ranks. If you are in a disagreement with another disciple, before you duke it out in the middle of the sect and destroy the sect's property or accidentally hurt other disciples, find a sect elder to settle it for you. If that's not enough, you can challenge the other to an official fight in the arena, where you are free to fight each other to your heart's content. However, you are not allowed to kill your opponent. If the two of you truly hate each other to the point where you are not willing to exist in the same world, you can request for a death match, and you will be able to kill your opponents during the death match. However, once you agree to a death match, the sect will no longer protect you no matter what happens, and you will be at the mercy of your opponent and vice versa. Therefore, don't request for a death match if you fear death. After talking about a few more major rules that they should not break, the sect elders asked the disciples, Do any of you have any questions for me before I let you all live your life as disciples? Where do we live, sect elder? One of the disciples raised her hands and asked. Your identification badge will show you the location of your living quarters, and it also acts as a key to the house so don't lose it. Furthermore, all outer court disciples are required to have roommates. Though, there will be some exceptions if you come from a renowned family. The sect elder glanced at Min Li briefly before continuing. Any more questions? When can we start participating in lectures by the sect elders? Another disciple asked. You can participate in them whenever you want. There will be at least 2 lectures a week from different sect elders at the education peak if you wish to listen to the lectures. If you're lucky, you might even get to see one of the higher-ranking sect elders there. Of course, they only appear once a year. After spending a few more minutes answering the disciples' questions, the sect elder handed out another book to everybody there and said, "This is a guidebook that mentions all of the locations and buildings within the Dragon Essence Temple, and it answers most frequently asked questions. Even if you are looking for something specific, it should all be in there. Follow current novels on lightnov/lpub.com. Now that you have completed your first lecture, I shall let you all experience life as a disciple for the Dragon Essence Temple for yourselves." Thank you, Senior. All of the disciples then stood up and bowed to the sect elder before leaving the building with excitement and enthusiasm. However, right as Yuan approached the door, the sect elder suddenly grabbed his arm and said, "Please stay here for a little longer, Disciple Yuan." "Oh, okay." Yuan nodded with a startled look on his face. Chapter 121 1000 Contribution Points. What's the matter, Senior? Yuan asked him once the rest of the disciples had left the room. Grand Elder Xian told me to hand you this identification token to you, said the sect elder as he handed Yuan another identity token. Identification token? But I already have one. Yuan raised his eyebrows in a puzzled manner. Don't ask me, I am just following the Grand Elder's orders. The sect elder shrugged before walking away in a hurried manner, almost like he didn't want to stay there any longer. What kind of background does that disciple have that the Grand Elder would do something like this for him? The sect elder wondered to himself after leaving the building, as this is his first time seeing a Grand Elder being involved with a mere outer court disciple, and he made a mental note to not offend a disciple named Yuan. Once the sect elder was gone, Yuan used his spiritual sense to activate the identification token, and inside his mind appeared the location of his living quarters. However, since he has 2 identification tokens, Yuan looked into both of them just in case there was a difference. Dragon Essence Temple Identification Bronze Token, Disciple Name, Yuan, Disciple Status, Outer Disciple, Living Quarters, Outer Court, Building #2/600. The most up-to-date novels are published on L//item/ovalpub. C/OM. Mission completed, 0, contribution points, 0, offenses, 0, __. Dragon Essence Temple Identification Gold Token, Disciple Name, Yuan, Disciple Status, Outer Disciple, Living Quarters, Outer Court, Building #70. Mission completed, 0, updated from lightnovelpub.com. Contribution points, 1000. Offenses, 0, 1000. Contribution points. Although he didn't know its worth, Yuan was delighted to suddenly have 1000 contribution points. While Yuan didn't know this, the 1000 contribution points was a portion of what Elder Xian earned after winning the gamble regarding his results during the Tablet of Comprehension. There were also 2 different buildings, so Yuan decided to take a look at the living quarter attached to the bronze token, which was building #2/600 within the outer sect. After following the map in the token for about half an hour, Yuan arrived before this ordinary-looking building. Once he used the token to open the door, Yuan entered the house and looked around. There were many rooms available inside the house, 6 to be exact, and 5 of them had their doors closed whilst the room near the end of the hallway was open. Yuan walked to the end of the hallway to look inside the room, and as had expected, the room was completely empty. This isn't much better than the guest room ID stayed 7 days in. Yuan was baffled when he saw how the bed alone took up half of the entire room. Visit lightnov/lpub.com for the best novel reading experience. However, at least this bed has a mattress on it. The quality of the mattress was another matter, though, as it was tough and uncomfortable. Of course, Yuan was unaware that there was a good reason as to why an elite sect such as the Dragon Essence Temple would have such poor living conditions, as having a comfortable bed or environment would only encourage laziness, hence why the sect is making it difficult for the disciples to relax and be lazy. Hopefully the other building is slightly better, Yuan sighed before walking out of the room. Are you a new disciple? One of the other 5 closed rooms there suddenly opened, and a young man around Yuan's age walked out of the room at the same time Yuan walked out of his room. Yes, I am, Yuan nodded. I see. Well, welcome to building #2-600. My surname is Shen, and I became a disciple here not long ago, 3 months ago. The disciple extended his hand for a handshake. Yuan accepted the handshake and introduced himself. My name is Yuan, and I just passed the disciple examination. Oh. Did you perhaps manage to see Fairy Min during the examination? Disciple Shen suddenly changed topics. New novel chapters are published on /lightnovelp/ub. C/om, Fairy Min. Oh, yes, I saw her achieving 50 steps during the 3rd examination, Yuan nodded. Damn. You lucky bastard managed to witness Fairy Min's glory. I wish I was there. If only I didn't decide to participate in the previous examination. Disciple Shen exclaimed, dumbfounding Yuan. Is she that famous? Yuan asked him afterward. Of course. Don't tell me you've not heard of her family, the Min family? They are one of the 7 legacy families. Disciple Shen spoke with an admiring look on his face. Legacy families? What are those? Yuan raised his eyebrows, as this is his first time hearing such a thing. You must have come from a backwater place if you don't even know of the 7 legacy families. They are the most influential and powerful families within the lower heavens. However, the most special thing about the legacy families is their history and background, as they are merely branches of a much larger power in the upper heavens. Why would they do that? Yuan asked. To train their descendants, obviously. If their descendants, which is Fairy Min in this case, fulfill her family's legacy, she will receive immense status and power once she returns to her family in the upper heavens. And for a family to have their own legacy, the Min family must be immensely powerful even in the upper heavens. Wow, the cultivation world is much more complicated than I thought. Yuan mumbled in a low voice. New novel chapters are published on lig/ht/novelpub/com anyways. I'm going to see if there are any easy missions I can partake in at the mission hall. I'll see you around, fellow disciple. Disciple Shen waved at him before leaving the building. Meanwhile, Yuan followed the map in his second identification token and went to his second living quarters. This is, however, before he even reached his building, Yuan was quickly dumbfounded by the luxurious buildings located in this area, feeling as though had accidentally entered the wrong neighborhood that was meant for the wealthy and powerful disciples. Am I going to live here? Yuan wondered as he looked for building number 70. Chapter 122 You Don, T belong here. After walking around for a few minutes and following the building numbers, Yuan finally arrived at building number 70, and it was a large building with 2 floors. This is definitely better than the previous house, but this might be a little too much of an improvement. Yuan stood in front of the building for a minute to admire the aesthetics of these buildings. Congratulations on passing the disciple examination, Fairy Min. Of course, we knew you'd pass the examination before you even took it. Forget about passing the examination. Fairy Min had achieved 50 steps in the silver pond. It has been 7 years since someone managed such a feat. I'm sure the Min family will be ecstatic once they hear of this. How would you like to celebrate this occasion? Should we have a feast at the Dragon Pavilion later? That sounds like a great idea. What do you think, Fairy Min? The food's on us. When Yuan overheard this conversation, he turned around and noticed a large group of disciples walking with a beautiful young lady, Fairy Min. However, these disciples were not wearing the outer court's uniform. The outer court disciples are given plain white clothes as their uniforms, whilst the inner court disciples get to wear colorful blue and green uniforms, and that was what the majority of the disciples following Fairy Min were wearing. Fairy Min suddenly stopped walking when she noticed Yuan standing not far away, and the other disciples also stopped to look at Yuan. For more, visit Light Novel Pub. Who's that guy? I don't recognize his face. One of the disciples there said. I don't either. Then what's he doing in this area? Looking at his uniform, he's only an outer court disciple. Besides Fairy Min, who's from one of the 7 legacy families and the top-ranking disciples, how many outer court disciples get to live here? He must have gotten lost or something. While the disciples mumbled to each other trying to figure out Yuan's ability, Fairy Min narrowed her eyes and stared at Yuan with a pondering expression. Why does it feel like I have seen him somewhere before? Fairy Min thought to herself. She was confident that she has never seen Yuan before, yet she couldn't shake off this feeling that she has seen him somewhere before, and it was very recently, too. However, her thoughts were quickly interrupted by the disciples around her. Hey! You there! What do you think you are doing in this place? This is not a place where ordinary outer court disciples can just wander around. Get out of here. New novel chapters are published on Lee/Novel/Pub. Hearing the disciples' question, Yuan responded in a calm voice, but I live here. What? You live here? The disciples exchanged glances with each other before one of them asked, Are you a new disciple? Which family do you belong in? Yes, I just passed the disciple examination, and I don't belong to any family, Yuan said. How can a nobody, a new disciple, no less, be assigned a house in this area meant for the privileged? Did the sect elders make a mistake somewhere and accidentally gave him the wrong house? One of the disciples spoke his thoughts out loud. That must be a case. Although it's uncommon, mistakes like this are bound to happen every so often. The other disciples quickly agreed with the disciple who just spoke. You heard us. There must have been a mistake that allowed you to get a house in this place. Return to the sect elder who handed you your identification token and tell him about the mistake. If you want to live in this area, you must either be ranked top 10 in the disciple ranking for the outer court disciples ranking or come from a prominent family like Fairy Min here. Hurry up and get out of here. You're ruining our moods. Yuan was speechless. These disciples were essentially telling him to tell Grand Elder Xian that had made a mistake. New novel chapters are published on /lightnovelp/ub. After a moment of silence, Yuan said to the disciples, I don't think there were any mistakes. Now if you'll excuse me, I would like to settle down in my new home. Yuan turned around and began walking towards his house. The disciples were dumbfounded by Yuan's daring response. Meanwhile, the disciple who just told Yuan to, the audacity. Do you know who you are talking to? I am an inner court disciple. Since you are a new disciple, I won't blame you too much. However, for you to claim that you live here despite what we told you whilst being a nobody, that's spitting in the faces of everyone that lives here, which includes Fairy Min. Therefore, I am going to need you to get on your knees and apologize to her. The inner court disciple stepped forward and pointed at Yuan with an overbearing aura. Yuan was speechless. It hasn't even been half a day since he got to live life as a disciple and he's already in an awkward situation with other disciples. Do you hear me? Get on your knees and apologize to Fairy Min. The inner court disciple repeated, seemingly adamant about making Yuan apologize. However, despite his humble nature, Yuan was not the type to apologize for something he didn't do, especially if the other party was being unreasonable. Updated from light/novel/pub/com. Why should I apologize? If there has truly been a mistake with my lodging, I will leave. However, you did not hand me my identification token, so you don't know that, yet you are telling me to apologize. Don't be unreasonable, Yuan said to the disciples with a slight frown on his face. And he continued, if you want to continue arguing that I don't belong here, you can bring a sect elder here and we can settle it that way. Until then, I am going to stay here. Goodbye. Yuan turned around and opened the door with the identification token before walking inside. Get back here, you little bastard. Yuan heard an angry shout as he entered the building, but he ignored it and closed the door. leaving the people outside completely speechless, as this is the first time they have encountered an outer court disciple like Yuan. Chapter 123 Returning with a Sect Elder. That damn disrespectful little brat. He's only a mere outer court disciple who'd just passed the disciple examination. How dare he disrespect and defy so many inner court disciples? Who the fuck does he think he is? The inner court disciple that Yuan ignored stomped the floor angrily, feeling his blood boiling from anger, as this is his first time being treated in such a fashion ever since he became an inner court disciple, and to make things even worse, it happened right in front of Fairy Min, the woman he admired. Right? I have never seen a disciple that disobedient towards his seniors. There must be something wrong with that disciple's head. He was probably dropped on the head when he was young. Since he wants to play, I'll play with him. He thinks everything will be okay if a sect elder is involved. I'll show him just how mistaken he is. A mere outer court disciple dares to defy me? Courting death. The inner court disciple sneered. Anyway, I will apologize for that disciple's crime. Please don't mind him, I'll have him kicked out of this place as soon as possible. After all, only privileged geniuses such as yourself are worthy of living here. The inner court disciple said to her with a smile on his face. You can do whatever you want, Fairy Min spoke for the first time, yet her voice was without emotions, almost like she was not interested in the situation or the disciples following her. Anyway, what do you think about our offer, Fairy Min? Do you want to celebrate with us at the Dragon Pavilion later today? The other disciples continued to ask her. No thank you, I am busy with other things, Fairy Min said to them before she began walking again. A few moments later, Fairy Min stopped in front of a certain building and began walking towards the door. When the disciples following her saw the building she was approaching, their faces dropped and their complexions paled. Visit /l/i/geitno/velpub.com for a better experience. What? That's ridiculous. Fairy Min's living quarters is actually right beside that little bastard? One of the disciples exclaimed out loud. Indeed, Fairy Min was assigned to building number 69, making Yuan her neighbor. Humph. He won't be living there for long. That's right. It'll be a miracle if he's still living in that building after today. I would love to break that door down and drag that little fucker out here and give him a good beating, but this is a special place that even we, inner court disciples, cannot intrude. Enough talking. I am going to get a sect elder to force that bastard out here and kowtow to us. I am going to let him know the disparity between an outer court disciple and an inner court disciple today. Ha ha ha. I'll stay here to make sure he doesn't go anywhere or try to run away. It's too late even if he's realized his mistakes. After today, he won't ever dare to disrespect another inner court disciple again. The inner court disciple nodded before leaving the scene to look for a sect elder whilst the other disciples lingered around the area, patiently waiting for him to return in anticipation for some good drama. Meanwhile, inside her house, after closing the door, Fairy Min sighed out loud, what a bunch of annoying and shameless individuals. I don't even know them, yet they're treating me as though we're best friends because of my background. Visit l/i/tno/velpub.com for a better experience. The inner court disciples and other disciples that had been following Fairy Min were complete strangers that decided to follow her on their own will, but such a scene was not uncommon for her. As the young lady of the Min family, there are always people looking for an opportunity to form a connection with her because of her powerful family, and it has been that way since she was young. However, she quickly learned that ignoring them and treating them as though they are invisible was the best solution, hence why she didn't tell them to go away. Though, I do feel sorry for that outer court disciple. He has offended so many inner court disciples on his first day as a new disciple in this sect, and I share some blame for his situation, as I was the one who brought them with me even if it wasn't intentional. Fairy Min sighed. However, it was too late to save the outer court disciple after everything that had happened, as the hole head dug himself was simply too deep. Even if a sect elder solves the problem with the lodging, the inner court disciples will surely continue to make that outer court disciple's life a living hell for offending them. Furthermore, as a member of a legacy family, she cannot meddle with others' affairs too much as it could reflect on her family as a whole, something she cannot afford to happen even if she has to turn a blind eye to some unfortunate young man. Sometime later, the inner court disciple returned to Yuan's living quarters with a sect elder by his side. Heavens! That Xiao Kong actually brought back Elder Yao, who is known for being especially harsh on outer court disciples while being the complete opposite for inner court disciples. That outer court disciple is truly unlucky to have to deal with some like Elder Yao. Ha ha ha. Forget about staying in that building, that outer court disciple probably won't be able to stay in the sect after this. Greetings, Elder Yao. This content is taken from lightnovelpub//com. The disciples there greeted him when he got close. Where is the outer court disciple that dares to disrespect inner court disciples and act almighty before the young lady of the Min family? Elder Yao spoke loudly. A few moments later, the inner court disciple known as Xiao Kong stopped in front of building number 70 and said to Elder Yao while pointing at the building, "This is the place, Elder Yao." "He's inside." Elder Yao nodded with an angry frown on his face. "Good. I will make this insolent brat regret being born today." Step back. Chapter 124. Lowering their heads. The disciples there immediately moved to make a path for Elder Yao, who approached Yuan's living quarters with heavy steps. I have never seen Elder Yao so angry before. That outer court disciple is dead. He's definitely going to regret acting all tough after meeting Elder Yao. The disciples there watched with anticipation as Elder Yao stepped on the doorstops in front of Yuan's building. Bang! 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 Elder Yao knocked on the door with force before shouting in a vicious voice, "This is Elder Yao from the 3rd Disciplinary Squad. Get your ass out here right this instant and identify yourself, outer court disciple." The disciples standing not far away felt their hearts tremble after hearing Elder Yao's loud voice, and even though they were not the ones in trouble, it still struck fear into their minds. Bang! 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 Get out here right this instant. Or do I have to force myself inside instead, outer court disciple? Elder Yao knocked on the door again when nobody answered the door after 5 short seconds. After a few more seconds, the door finally opened, and Yuan appeared before them once again with a calm expression on his face. "So you're the outer court disciple who claimed that you belong in this area? If that's the case, how come I don't recognize your face at all, huh?" Elder Yen narrowed his eyes at Yuan's face. Follow current novels on lighten/ovalpub/com. Isn't it normal that you won't recognize everyone in the world? Yuan asked with his eyebrows raised. Elder Yao looked at him with a face of disbelief. "You actually dare talk back to me, a sect elder? Looks like Disciple Xiao was telling the truth when he called you a disrespectful little brat. Kneel before me right now and apologize." Yuan was speechless. He frowned a moment later and said, "Aren't you here to see whether assigning this house to me is a mistake or not? Yet you started yelling at me the moment you arrived, acting like I am in the wrong. I respect my seniors, but I also know an unreasonable person when I see one. Why, you little brat? You really think you deserve to live here, huh? You are just a nobody. A mere outer court disciple who just passed the disciple examination." Elder Yao roared at Yuan, and he continued, "And you dare to claim that you are worthy enough to live beside someone like the young lady of the Min family? Do you have no shame? Even I wouldn't dare to live beside the Min family if you paid me. If it wasn't a mistake that you got assigned this building, I will freaking eat my shoes before every single outer court disciple in this sect." Hearing Elder Yao's words, Yuan became speechless. Is this sect elder really going to eat his own shoes? He cannot imagine it. "Since you don't want to leave this place, I have no choice but to force you out with my authority as a sect elder of the disciplinary hall." And before Yuan could even respond, Elder Yao suddenly moved to grab him by the collar before throwing him into the air and forcing him out of the house. Follow current novels on li/gitnovelpub/com. Whoa. Yuan landed a few meters away with a startled look on his face. Now hand me your identification token. Or do I have to take it with force as well? Elder Yao approached him with an overbearing and oppressing aura. However, since Elder Yao was only a 4th-level spirit warrior cultivator, Yuan didn't feel any pressure from him. Should I just use the absolute authority the sect master gave me to deal with this situation? Yuan pondered as Elder Yao got closer to him. After all, even a naive little boy would be able to tell by now that Elder Yao was not the reasonable type and that no matter what Yuan says to him at this point, he would only be wasting his breath. I wanted to settle this as peacefully as possible, but alas, Yuan sighed inwardly as he reached into his spatial ring for the absolute authority. However, before Yuan could even take it out, a loud sigh suddenly resounded and echoed in the area. I knew you would run into some trouble when I decided to give you one of the buildings in this place, but I didn't think it'd come so soon and in such a manner, too. A calm voice followed after the sigh ended. This voice is. Elder Yao immediately stopped walking after hearing this profound voice, and his body trembled in shock. Updated from Lee/Gitnov/Lpub/com. However, the other disciples did not recognize the identity behind this mysterious voice and were completely puzzled. Meanwhile, inside one of the rooms in building number 69, Fairy Min, who had been watching the situation from the beginning by peeking through the closed curtains from the windows, mumbled in a surprised voice, "This voice belongs to Grand Elder Xian. Why did he show up here?" And judging by his words, it seems like he was the one who allowed that outer court disciple to live here. Just who is that young man? Elder Yao, I am greatly disappointed by your performance today. As a sect elder of the disciplinary hall, I had expected you to handle this situation professionally and properly, yet you were blinded by anger and acted unfitting of your status, even treating my granddaughter's friend in such an aggressive manner. I don't know what I should do with you. Elder Xian's voice continued to speak, lecturing Elder Yao, who was sweating profusely at this moment. Elder Yao quickly kneeled on the ground and lowered his head before speaking in a pleading voice. This disciple was wrong and has done something inexcusable. Please punish this disciple as you see fit, Grand Elder. Grand Elder? The disciples watching the scene were greatly shocked after hearing Elder Yao's voice, and they finally realized the identity behind the voice. After realizing this fact, they also kneeled on the ground with their heads lowered and their backs soaked in cold sweats, wondering to themselves why the hell would a Grand Elder suddenly become involved with their situation. Chapter 125 Two Choices. Seeing Elder Yao and the disciples lowering their heads, Elder Xian spoke without revealing his presence. If you think lowering your heads will solve everything, the world would not be this chaotic and dangerous. Please forgive us, Grand Elder. We were wrong. We didn't know this outer court disciple was assigned to this place by you. Xiao Kong suddenly said. Did I ask for your input, disciple? Elder Xian responded in a nonchalant voice, immediately shutting the Xiao Kong up. Elder Xian continued a moment later. Every disciple here will be punished with 1 month of confinement within the caves of repentance. As for you, Elder Yao, since you belong to the disciplinary hall, I shall let your leader decide your punishment. And before you leave, I want you to remember what comes out of my mouth next. What happened here today did not happen at all, do you understand me? I was never here, and you have never met the outer court disciple. This applies to the disciples, too. If I hear even a single disciple that is not here right now speaking about what happened here today, you can expect another visit from me, and I will be there in person at that time. We understand, Grand Elder. We will forget about what happened today. Elder Yao and the disciples responded in a fearful voice. Good. Now get out of my sight. Elder Xian's voice boomed within the disciples and Elder Yao's head, nearly knocking them unconscious with his powerful voice. The next second, once they could stand again, the disciples and Elder Yao ran away like a bunch of scared rabbits before a tiger. New novel chapters are published on light/novel//pub. Come. Once they were all gone, Elder Xian spoke again. Are you okay, Disciple Yuan? I apologize for that just now. While it's common for disciples to argue with each other, it's inexcusable for a sect elder to bully a disciple. Don't worry about it, Senior Xian. It's only natural that there'd be a couple of bad apples no matter where you are, Yuan said with a calm smile on his face. You have handled this situation much better than I would have if I was still a disciple, and I thank you for that. Most people quickly resort to violence when they come to a disagreement, and that is a trait many cultivators have because we are vicious and brutal in nature. Anyway, I must return to my own business now. If you ever encounter another similar situation, it's okay to scare them a little with your powers as long as you don't kill them. This is just how the cultivation world works, as intimidation works better than actual violence in most cases. However, if a sect elder is involved like today, it's best if you immediately contact one of us to help you. Although we won't show ourselves, we'll definitely keep you safe. Intimidation over violence. I will keep that in mind, Senior Xian. Thank you very much for helping me today. Yuan bowed towards the sky, feeling as though he'd learned something important today. Don't even mention it. Ha ha ha. Elder Xian's voice sounded as though it was getting further away, dumbfounding Yuan. Once Yuan could no longer hear Elder Xian's laughing voice, Yuan returned to his room and sat on the large, comfortable bed before taking out the guidebook and reading through it as he was doing before being interrupted by Elder Yao and the others. Meanwhile, inside Fairy Mint's room, the beautiful young lady remained standing by the window with a dazed look on her face. Disciple Yuan? I don't recognize this name at all. Just who is he? Which family did he come from? And what kind of connection does he have with the Grand Elder? Although the Grand Elder said that the outer court disciple was his granddaughter's friend, their conversation sounded like they were pretty close friends themselves. Min Li mumbled to herself in a dumbfounded voice, feeling her interest slightly piqued by him. Updated from Light Novel Pub. Come sometime later, at the disciplinary hall, Elder Yao entered Bai Ling's room after being summoned by him. Greetings, Leader Bai. Elder Yao bowed to him with respect and his back soaked in sweat. Do you know why I called you here? Bai Ling ignored his greetings and asked him with a calm voice. Yes, I do. Elder Yao responded after a brief moment of silence. Good, then this will make things much easier for the both of us. Bai Ling then stood up from his chair and walked to the window before staring outside with a seemingly dazed look on his face. Do you have any idea what you've done today, Elder Yao? Bai Ling asked him a moment later. No, I do not, Leader Bai. Elder Yao quickly responded. At least you're honest, Bai Ling nodded, and he continued, that outer court disciple, you may not know him now, but I can guarantee you that you will know him in the near future, and I am willing to bet my position as leader of the disciplinary hall that you will regret what you've done today. Elder Yao looked at him with a surprised look, and he said, Please enlighten this ignorant one, Leader Bai. Just who is that outer court disciple and why did Grand Elder Xian protect him? New novel chapters are published on Light Novel Pub. However, Bai Ling did not respond to his question and continued to speak as though he never heard it. I will give you two choices, Elder Yao. For your offenses today, I can either let the sect master know about this incident so he can punish you himself, or you can give a lecture to the disciples at the education peak and eat your shoes before every disciple there afterward. It's your decision. What did you just say? Elder Yao cried out loud with pure disbelief on his face. Why on earth would Bai Ling involve the sect master over a mere outer court disciple? It was not as though he'd killed this disciple. This is ridiculous. How can they treat a sect elder like him because of a single outer court disciple? None of this made any sense. Chapter 126 A massive crowd at the education peak. Did I stutter, Elder Yao? Perhaps I did, so allow me to rephrase myself. Bai Ling then spoke slower but in a much louder and clearer voice. Either I let the sect master know about your mistakes today, or you eat your own shoes before the disciples at the education peak at the end of your lecture. I won't do something as unreasonable as kicking you out of the sect or anything like that, so consider yourself lucky that you're getting off so lightly. Motherfucker. You dare call this a light punishment? Telling me to eat my shoes in front of the disciples is worse than being kicked out of the sect. At least I would still have my dignity left for the latter punishment. Elder Yao cursed at Bai Ling inwardly, as he didn't dare to utter such words for real. I know what you're thinking, Elder Yao. After all, you have worked with me for over 10 years now. However, you have no idea how much trouble you are actually in, and I don't blame you for that. That's why I am letting you know right now that you should eat your own shoes before I let the sect master know, as he might really kick you out of the sect if he finds out what had transpired today. Bai Ling said to Elder Yao while knowing very well that Long Yijuan will definitely hear about this incident sooner or later. Is this situation really that serious? I would understand it if that outer court disciple belonged to one of the 7 legacy families, but he's clearly not. Elder Yao spoke a moment later with a relentless expression on his face. Don't even bother asking me about that outer court disciple's identity because I won't say anything unless you don't mind dying afterward. Bai Ling looked at Elder Yao with his eyes narrowed and emitting faint killing intent. Elder Yao swallowed nervously after seeing this, and after a moment of silence, he sighed, very well. I shall eat my own shoes in front of the disciples, good choice. You may leave now. Bai Ling said to him. Elder Yao nodded and left the room, but he didn't forget to bow to Bai Ling before leaving, as that was how much had respected the leader of the disciplinary hall. Not just Grand Elder Xian but even Leader Bai and possibly the sect master is protecting that outer court disciple. What on earth is that brat's identity? If he doesn't belong to the 7 legacy families, then he could only come from the 4 ancient families. Elder Yao pondered to himself as he returned home to prepare for the lecture. For more, visit /li/novel/pub. C/om. Later the same day, Elder Yao walked to the education peak with a solemn expression on his face. Damn. I shouldn't have run my mouth at that time. No. That fucking brat Xiao Kong is the root of this. If he didn't come to me, I would have never met that damn outer court disciple and offended the Grand Elder and Leader Bai. I'll fucking kill him once he comes out of confinement. Elder Yao cursed inwardly as he approached the education peak, where thousands of disciples could be seen walking about. The education peak is where disciples gather to partake in lectures from sect elders. However, not only sect elders gave lectures there, as disciples are also able to give their own lectures if they were approved by the sect, so there would always be lectures for disciples to participate. Of course, the education peak is the most populated when a sect elder decides to give a lecture, as they are often the most knowledgeable and experienced in the sect, hence why when Elder Yao suddenly showed up at the education peak, the disciples there immediately began following him. Isn't that Elder Yao? It's been a while since I have been to one of his lectures. Me, too. The last time he'd given a lecture was nearly 3 years ago. I heard that over a dozen outer court disciples who'd listened to his lecture managed to become an inner court disciple within the same year. Really? Then I must listen to his lecture today even if the heavens fall. We still don't know whether Elder Yao is really giving a lecture today or he's just visiting since there was no prior notice. Most sect elders announce their lectures at least a week beforehand. He's not telling us that he's not giving a lecture even though there are so many of us clearly following him. Surely, he intends on giving a lecture today. Updated from lightnov/lpub// C/om, I hope you're right. I have been dying to attend a lecture given by Elder Yao. The hype between the disciples grew as they followed Elder Yao to one of the many empty areas designed for public lectures. Sometime later, Elder Yao settled down in one of these areas and stood at the spot meant for the lecturers. See. He's really giving a lecture today. Looks like we lucked out today by coming here and witnessing it by chance. Ha ha ha. You are so damn right. Hey, is it just me or does Elder Yao seem a bit off today? He looks kind of sick. One of the disciples there noticed Elder Yao's pale complexion and mumbled to the disciples around him. You're right. He looks like he hasn't slept or eaten in a week or something. Meanwhile, Elder Yao scanned the massive crowd that had gathered for his lecture with his back soaked in cold sweats. Fuck, why are there so many disciples at the education peak today when there are no sect elders giving lectures? If I don't become a laughing stock after today, I'll eat my damn shoes again. Elder Yao cursed inwardly, feeling the urge to cry out loud. For more, visit light/novel.pub.com. There were at least 3,000 disciples gathered there, and every single one of them was staring at Elder Yao with anticipation in their gazes, looking like a bunch of children before their idol. But alas, little did they expect that they were merely participating in a clown show disguised as a lecture. Chapter 127. Eating his own shoes. Ahem. Elder Yao suddenly cleared his throat loudly, trying to relieve some of his anxiety, but alas, it barely helped him keep calm. Welcome, disciples. For today's lecture. I will be giving a lecture on. Elder Yao spoke in a trembling voice, feeling as though he was a child with stage fright while standing on the stage for the first time, and he could barely complete a full sentence without stuttering. When the disciples saw this, they silently looked at each other with their eyebrows raised and their gazes full of questions. Why was Elder Yao acting so weird? It seemed like he was on the verge of a breakdown from the disciples' view. Are you okay, Elder Yao? You don't look so good. One of the inner court disciples there decided to ask him. I am fine. Just feeling a little under the weather. Elder Yao responded a moment later. Feeling under the weather? The disciples became even more puzzled after hearing such words. Why would a sect elder willingly give a lecture when he's sick? Furthermore, can cultivators even feel under the weather? Clearly, it was something else that was bothering him, but these disciples didn't dare to probe any further and accepted his lie as the truth, as they didn't dare to offend Elder Yao, who was known for being a ruthless sect elder. The disciples then patiently waited for Elder Yao to get himself together before continuing with the lecture. A few minutes later, once Elder Yao calmed down enough, he began giving the lecture, and it was about random things that made no sense for a lecture, but the nervousness and uncertainty in his voice did not go away and remained for the rest of the lecture. In fact, his voice only became weirder and harder to listen as the lecture went on. The disciples participating in the lecture were greatly baffled by the bizarre situation, with some of them even thinking that they were being pranked by Elder Yao. After all, no sane sect elder would call this mess a lecture, as it was more of a babbling session with the topic constantly changing abruptly. This content is taken from lightnovel.pub.com. However, none of the disciples spoke up nor complained regardless of the unusual situation, nor did any of them decide to suddenly leave the lecture abruptly, as they were still afraid of offending Elder Yao. The lecture by Elder Yao lasted for an entire hour, but for the disciples, it felt like they were being punished for an eternity. Fuck. Why am I wasting my time here? I could have been listening to Fairy Ling's lecture by now. What the heck is Elder Yao doing? Has he lost his mind? I want my precious time back. Damn it. I want to leave now, but what if I offend him? I have heard about his reputation and I don't want to be the first one to leave. The disciples there cursed inwardly, and most of them silently hoped for another disciple to leave first so they can follow. But alas, because all of them were thinking the same thing and waited for someone else to act, none of them left and stayed for the entire lecture. This is the end of my lecture. Elder Yao said to the disciples at the end of the lecture. However, he wasn't completely finished there, as he still had one more thing to do. And just as the disciples there sighed in relief inwardly that the lecture was finally finished and prepared to leave, Elder Yao suddenly removed his shoes and began doing the unthinkable, putting it in his mouth and chewing it as though it was food. The most up-to-date novels are published on lightnovel.pub.com. What the fuck? One of the disciples there couldn't hold back his voice and spoke in a surprised voice after witnessing Elder Yao eating his own shoes. In fact, every disciple there was staring at Elder Yao with a gawking expression at this moment, looking like they were witnessing the impossible. And because Elder Yao was a cultivator at the spirit warrior realm, he was able to bite through the shoe with his raw strength and chew on it. After chewing on his own shoes for a few seconds with a disgusted expression that he could not hide on his face, Elder Yao swallowed it. URG. Elder Yao almost puked after feeling the shoe enter his stomach, but alas, he resisted his urges and continued eating the rest of the shoe. The disciples that were prepared to leave the place as quickly as possible no longer moved, and they all stood there with dazed faces as they watched Elder Yao eat his shoe with a suffering expression on his face. A few gruesome minutes later, Elder Yao finished eating his shoe. However, he did not stop there and proceeded to remove his second shoe and began eating that too. Sometime later, Elder Yao finished eating his other shoe. Updated from L/IT Novelpub. Once he swallowed the last bit of his shoe, Elder Yao glared at the disciples there before walking away in silence and quickly disappearing from the scene while barefooted, leaving the disciples in wonder as head left without giving any explanation. When Elder Yao's figure left the education peak, all of the disciples there finally spoke again, immediately creating an uproar within the sect, and as one would have expected from such a bizarre situation, news of Elder Yao eating his own shoes after an embarrassing lecture spread throughout the entire sect like wildfire, shocking every disciple and sect elder that heard it. Meanwhile, at the disciplinary hall, Elder Yao stood before Bai Ling once again, but he was barefooted this time since he came straight to this place after leaving the education peak. I hope you've learned your lesson today, Elder Yao. Just because they are outer court disciples doesn't mean you can walk all over them like they're ants, as you'll one day step on the wrong ant and face its wrath like today, Bai Ling said to him with a nonchalant expression on his face. Thank you for this lesson, Leader Bai. Elder Yao bowed to him before leaving the room with a blank look on his face, looking like he had died inside. Chapter 128. What does new disciples normally do? At the sect master's pagoda, Long Yijuan listened to Elder Xian briefing him about the situation with a serious expression on his face. Elder Yao and disciple Yuan, what a pain in the ass. Long Yijuan rubbed his eyes with an exhausted look afterward. Are you going to do anything about this, sect master? Elder Xian asked him. After a moment of silence, Long Yijuan shook his head and said, as much as I want to beat Elder Yao for what he did to disciple Yuan, Elder Bai has already dealt with the situation and punished Elder Yao for his behavior. I appointed Elder Bai the leader of the disciplinary hall for a reason, and I don't like beating a dead horse, so I am not going to step in this time. I understand, Elder Xian nodded. Meanwhile, back at building number 70, Yuan closed the guidebook after reading through the entire thing. Wow, there are so many exciting places in the Dragon Essence Temple. I will definitely visit all of them when I get the chance, especially this Dragon Pavilion restaurant that's meant for cultivators. I wonder how it differs from the restaurants outside? Yuan mumbled to himself. It's still too early for dinner, so I'll look around for now. Yuan then got off the bed and made his way outside. What should I do now that I am a disciple? What do disciples normally do? Yuan pondered to himself as he went outside. Disciple Yuan. Please wait for a second. The most up-to-date novels are published on Li/Gaitno/Velpu/B/C/OM. Yuan stopped walking when a clear voice resounded from behind him, causing him to turn around to see who'd just spoken. You are. To his surprise, Fairy Min was outside of her house and appeared to be the one who'd just called for him. How did you know my name? Yuan asked her with raised eyebrows, as he doesn't recall ever introducing himself to her or any of the disciples from the disciple examination. I accidentally overheard your conversation with Grand Elder Xian and learned of your name. Don't worry, I won't tell anyone about your relationship with the Grand Elder or what happened today. Fairy Min spoke as she approached him. I see, thank you. Yuan responded with a puzzled look on his face, as he wasn't sure what she was up to. Is she going to try and kick me out, too? Yuan wondered to himself. Once Fairy Min was standing a few steps away from him, she spoke. I haven't introduced myself. I am Min Li from one of the 7 Legacy family. And I would like to apologize for what happened today. Even though I didn't know them, I should have stepped in and told them to stop. Huh? You didn't know them? Yuan looked at her with wide eyes. Then why were they following her around like they were a group of close friends? Hell, they even spoke to her as though they have known each other for years. For more, visit lig/novelpub. /com. I know this may sound like I am bragging, but when you're coming from a family as prestigious as one of the 7 legacy families, there are always people like those disciples from before following me around hoping they'd benefit from me or my family, and it's better for me to act like they are not there most of the time, hence why I didn't tell them to go away. Minli explained to him after seeing his puzzled face. Of course, I am sure you understand my feelings since you also appear to be from a powerful family. Yuan scratched his head with an awkward atmosphere around him, and he said, I'm not from any powerful nor prestigious family, though. Huh? You're not? Minli looked at him with her eyes widened slightly from surprise. If he doesn't come from a powerful or influential family, why did Grand Elder Xian protect him from Elder Yao and the inner court disciples, much less give him a building in this area meant for the privileged? Surely, there must be something special about him. So you want to hide your real identity, huh? I will find out the truth sooner or later. Minli thought to herself whilst trying her best to remain calm on the outside. By the way, where are you going now? Minli suddenly asked him. I honestly don't know myself. I'll probably just walk around until I see something interesting, Yuan shrugged. Walk around until you see something interesting? Minli raised her neat and slender eyebrows in a puzzled manner. Why does it sound like he's going to take a stroll around the sect like he's at the park? Does he have that much free time on his hands? Even though he'd just become a disciple? After all, most people would be either cultivating or doing something more productive as a new disciple. Updated from light//no/vel/pub.com, do you have any suggestions? What do disciples normally do when they just joined a sect? Yuan suddenly asked her. They either go to the Profound Pavilion to learn new techniques or they go to the Education Peak for lectures. However, seeing that you are at the 7th level Spirit Apprentice already, you should go to the Profound Pavilion. Minli gave her suggestions to him. Profound Pavilion, huh? Yuan immediately began pondering. I already have 3 sword techniques, but I only have 1 dagger technique, and it's not really even a dagger technique as it's meant for cooking instead. Maybe I should see if the Profound Pavilion will have a good dagger technique that'll go well with the Starry Abyss. After pondering for a minute, Yuan has decided to go to the Profound Pavilion to search for a new dagger technique. Thank you, Disciple Min, for your guidance, Yuan said to her with a bright smile, and he continued, and you don't worry about what happened previously since I can tell that you're not a bad person. Minli looked at his handsome smile with a slightly dazed look on her pretty face, and when she noticed that Yuan was walking away, she unconsciously shouted, wait. I'll come with you, too. Chapter 129 Profound Pavilion. You want to come with me? Why? Yuan stopped to look at her with a puzzled face. Why, you ask? Minli stood there with a somewhat dazed face, as she'd spoken without thinking just now. However, this is also the first time someone has questioned her like this. If it were anybody else, they wouldn't even think about asking her why she wanted to follow them and would just accept it with a delighted smile on their face. I had also planned on heading to the Profound Pavilion to see if they have any techniques I can learn. Since you're going there now, I might as well tag along with you. Or do you not want me around you? Am I being a bother? If you're worried that I might attract unwanted attention, I can follow you from a distance, Minli said to him a moment later. Well, it's not that you're being a bother. Whatever, you can do whatever you want. Yuan quickly gave up on giving an explanation and allowed her to follow him. Thank you, Disciple Yuan. Minli showed him a beautifully bright smile. Yuan didn't react much despite her charming appearance and nodded his head with a calm expression before turning around and walking again. Minli was speechless once again, and she stared at Yuan's back that was getting further away with a dazed look. He seems uninterested in me. This is a first. Minli thought to herself before she took her first step and began walking once Yuan was a dozen meters away from her. Look over there. Isn't that Fairy Min from one of the 7 legacy families? For more, visit lightnovelpub.com, you're right. And she looks absolutely stunning. I wonder where she's going. The disciples outside quickly took notice of Min Li's presence and conversations about her and her family immediately began between the disciples. Hell, there were even a few disciples who began following her like the group of inner court disciples from before. Congratulations on passing the disciple examination and becoming a disciple, Fairy Min. Fairy Min, do you have some time now? If you do, why don't we have a celebration? She's really popular. Yuan thought to himself as he could hear the disciples trying to talk to Minli very clearly. However, a few moments later, Minli suddenly stopped walking and turned around to look at the group of disciples following behind her, and she spoke with a calm but cold expression on her face. I am busy right now. Can you all leave me alone? The disciples following her immediately stopped walking and looked at her with a dumbfounded expression before showing an embarrassed or awkward look on their faces. Thank you. Minli did not even wait for their response and continued walking, subtly following Yuan from behind while keeping a safe distance so that people would only assume that they were coincidentally walking the same direction. For more, visit /lightnov/lp/ub/. Meanwhile, Yuan followed the map inside his head that had memorized from the guidebook and slowly approached the profound pavilion. Sometime later, Yuan arrived before a tall building that resembled the myriad of techniques in Spring City, but it was much more luxurious and grand compared to the ordinary-looking myriad of techniques. After taking a moment to admire the building, Yuan walked inside. Minli followed him inside a moment later. Once Yuan was inside the profound pavilion, he was immediately puzzled by the layout of the place. Unlike the myriad of pavilion, there were no techniques on display, and besides the reception and a staircase at the end of the building, there was nothing else there. You must be a new disciple. One of the sect elders behind the desk suddenly called out to Yuan after seeing his face that looked like he was lost. Yes, I am. Yuan nodded before he approached the desk with a middle-aged man sitting behind it. What kind of techniques are you looking for, new disciple? Cultivation techniques? Martial techniques? Movement techniques? The sect elder asked him a moment later. Follow current novels on light//novel/pub/com ID like a technique that's specifically designed for daggers, Yuan said. So you're a dagger user, huh? What's your budget? The sect elder then asked him. Budget? I have to pay for techniques here? Yuan looked at the sect elder with a surprised look on his face as the guidebook never mentioned anything about needing to pay for the techniques. Of course you have to pay for the techniques. Did you think you'd get to learn techniques for free just because you are a disciple? This is why new disciples are. The sect elder shook his head. Well, I have around 200,000 gold coins left. Yuan said a moment later. Gold coins? The sect elder looked at Yuan with raised eyebrows before laughing out loud. Ha ha ha. You're a very amusing little guy, outer court disciple. When I say you have to pay for the techniques, I didn't mean gold. This is the profound pavilion, not a store, and we accept no other currency besides contribution points. The sect elder explained to him a moment later. If we charge the disciples real money, how will those from a common background learn any techniques? This is a sect, where a disciple's contribution and efforts take priority over everything else. That makes sense. Yuan nodded, and then he said, if it's contribution points, I have exactly 1,000. What can I get with that much? This content is taken from lightnovelpub.com. Excuse me? What did you just say? Did you just say that you have 1,000 contribution points? The sect elder looked at Yuan with a face of disbelief. Yes, Yuan confirmed. Or is that not enough for a technique? The sect elder was speechless. 1,000 contribution points was a massive amount for even an inner court disciple, much less an outer court disciple who'd just entered the sect. Hell, it would normally require 10 years of collecting contribution points through sect missions for an ordinary disciple to save up that many contribution points. However, this outer court disciple who was clearly new to the sect had somehow managed to obtain 1,000 contribution points. That was outrageous. Chapter 130 Flying Daggers. You have 1,000 contribution points. That's ridiculous. The sect elder exclaimed in a loud voice, causing everybody there to look at them with a curious gaze. Meanwhile, Minli watched Yuan from the corner of the building like a partner watching their children's first shopping experience. 1,000 contribution points. Even I only got 100 contribution points for joining the sect. Why is there such a big disparity between the two of us? Minli pondered to herself as she continued trying to unveil Yuan's mysterious identity and seemingly unfathomable background. Since you claim to have 1,000 contribution points, let me see your identification token. The sect elder extended his arm with his hands open and his fingers gesturing to give it to him. Yuan nodded and handed the sect elder his identification token without hesitation. Once the identification token was in his hands, the sect elder used his spiritual energy to peek inside the token, and Yuan's identification appeared. Dragon Essence Temple Identification Gold Token, Disciple Name, Yuan. Disciple Status, Outer Disciple, Living Quarters, Outer Court, Building #70 Visit Light Novel Pub, Com for a Better Experience. Mission completed, 0, Contribution Points, 1,000, Offenses, 0, Heavens. This Outer Court Disciple has a gold identification token. And he really has 1,000 contribution points. The sect elder cried inwardly after confirming that Yuan was not lying about his contribution points. The sect elder swallowed nervously before turning to look at Yuan with a different kind of light in his eyes and with a respectful gaze. There existed 4 grades of identification tokens in the Dragon Essence Temple. Bronze grade, Silver grade, Gold grade, and finally, Dragon grade tokens. Every grade of identification represented the importance of whoever held that token. For example, if a disciple has a bronze identification token, that person was an ordinary disciple without any impressive backgrounds. Meanwhile, those with silver identification tokens are people with decent backings or have impressive talents. As for those with a gold identification token, only those who come from prominent or powerful families such as the 7 legacy families are qualified to obtain one. Visit Light Novel Pub, Com for the best novel reading experience. For the Dragon Identification Token, only the sect masters or high-ranking elders are allowed to have it. However, this ranking applied to not just disciples but to sect elders too, and in this case, the sect elder speaking with Yuan right now was only a bronze identification token holder. In other words, he was below Yuan in terms of status. Thank you, Disciple Yuan. I have confirmed your contribution points. Please give me a few moments to bring you the cultivation technique specialized for dagger users. The sect elder spoke to Yuan in a respectful and humble tone, dumbfounding the people that had been watching them. Does that outer court disciple really have 1,000 contribution points? I cannot imagine what he must have gone through in order to collect so many contribution points. You can obtain any cultivation technique you want from this place with that many contribution points. I envy him. The disciples began mumbling to each other about Yuan. A few minutes later, the sect elder helping Yuan returned to the desk with over a dozen martial techniques that are best suited for daggers. Thank you for your patience, Disciple Yuan. I have brought pretty much every technique suitable for daggers from the back with me, and they are mostly mortal rank with a few exceptions at the earth rank. Please take your time looking through them, said the sect elder with a humble look on his face, dumbfounding Minli and the other disciples, as it was an incredibly weird feeling to see a sect elder acting so humble before an outer court disciple who didn't have any reputation. Yuan proceeded to look through the techniques one by one without reading the contents inside, as he was afraid of learning them by accident. Follow current novels on Light Novels/pub, C/om Poison Stab, Night's Edge, Exploding Dagger, Zealous Piercer. Yuan spent the next few minutes reading the techniques' names and their description. This is. Yuan looked at the last martial technique in the stack with an intrigued look on his face. Flying Daggers. Mortal rank. Even though the technique was only a mortal rank technique, the word flying had instantly attracted his attention. It looks like you are interested in the flying dagger technique, Disciple Yuan. Although it's only a mortal rank technique, if mastered, you'll be able to defeat your opponents from a distance even with a weapon known for its short range such as the dagger. The sect elder said to him after seeing his intrigued face. How many contribution points for this technique? I want it, said Yuan, as the idea of defeating his enemies from afar sounded very cool to him. That technique would set you back 75 contribution points, Disciple Yuan, said the sect elder. The source of this content is /lightnov/lpub. Com, only 75 contribution points. That's very cheap. I'll take it. Yuan said with a pleasantly surprised look on his face. Very cheap. The sect elder's eyebrows twitched after hearing his words. Although 75 contribution points may seem like nothing when he has 1,000 contribution points to spare, it would take a normal disciple almost an entire year to obtain. I understand. You want the flying dagger technique, right? I'll subtract it from your 1,000 contribution points now. A few moments later, the sect elder handed the gold identification token back to Yuan. Good luck with the technique, disciple Yuan. Thank you, Yuan nodded as he tossed the flying dagger technique into his spatial ring. Once had gotten his technique, Yuan turned around and prepared to leave, and that was when he noticed Min Li standing in the background. Why are you standing there? Aren't you going to get a technique, too? Yuan asked her. For more, visit lightnovelpus/b, com, no, I am fine. I don't need any techniques, she calmly shook her head. Yuan was speechless after hearing her words. If she didn't need any techniques, then why did she follow him all the way over here, even saying that she planned on coming here? Anyway, what are you going to do now that you've gotten a technique? Are you going to the practice field to try out your new technique? Min Li then asked, dumbfounding Yuan even more with her eccentric behavior. You're tuning into the Carefree Valley YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.